Hi, everybody. Good evening. Can I have a motion to exit executive session?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Conley? You voting?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Zahowski?
Yes.
Ms. Hanley?
Healy.
Healy?
It's Healy.
Mr. Hollis?
Yes.
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis?
Yes.
Mr. Dorr?
Yes.
And myself is yes. Okay, could we stand for the pledge?
Matt's got the flag.
Got the flag there?
Flag's behind
Mr.
me.
Wallace? Got the flag?
Yep.
We got the flag.
We can't see your flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag. It's up in the corner here.
Can't see
See
it.
it right up there.
The Republic.
We don't see it.
It's right there.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
To the-
To the Republic.
For which it stands, one
one
nation,
nation.
under God, indivisible, with
Liberty and justice
Justice
for all.
for all. Thank you, Mr. Wallace.
Oh, you betcha.
Okay, I just have something that I have to read for the public so everyone understands. First off, what we're doing tonight is the first time that we're doing this. So everyone's gonna have to bear with us. But later this evening, we will be answering the questions you submitted through our online form. At the end of the meeting, we will be allowing members of the public to log into Zoom and ask live questions. So everybody run for a pen, because here we go. If you have a question that you want to pose to the board live, please join our Zoom meeting. The meeting ID is 841-7528-4231. I'll repeat that. 841-7528-4231. If you are joining the meeting through your computer, please use the password capital letters, all capitals, RCSD BOE. If you wish to call into the Zoom meeting rather than using your computer, please dial 929-436-2866. Enter the meeting ID of 841-7528-4231. And the passcode for that is 5753-203. We will be devoting no more than 20 minutes to the public comment portion of the meeting, and each member of the public will get 3 minutes to speak. We look forward to hearing from you. We will be admitted to the meeting in order of arrival. And please note, if you are watching this meeting on YouTube, there is a delay of about 60 seconds between the live Zoom meeting and the YouTube broadcast. Please log into Zoom waiting room early to reserve your place in line. So this is what we're going to be doing. So now we have the superintendent's report. Christine?
Thank you, Mrs. Downs. Give me 1 second. Okay. Mr. Schneider, can you, how am I going to do this? Let's see. How did I do this last time when I shared the screen? It's not giving me. I did this before. Okay, I'm having technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Your turn.
Yes, but I can't see my my notes. Give me 1 second, please. Can you see it now?
See your presentation.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Okay. So good evening, everyone. So tonight we're beginning a new process where I'll be reporting on the previous month's enrollment changes and residency concerns. I'll continue to present this information to the board at the first board meeting of each month. So first, I'd like to share with you a reentry update. First of all, the plan was submitted to New York State Education Department and the New York State Department of Health last Friday, July 31st, 2020. The plan was posted to the website. This is a fluid process. The district task force for reentry continues to meet weekly. We've been having discussions about how to fine tune our plan. We are aware that specific protocols continue to be determined, and we're working on those, and we'll be sharing those with the public as they're created. We're also waiting on Governor Cuomo's information about whether we will be allowed to bring students back live in September. So we're waiting for that. We've been told that he was supposed to make that announcement sometime this week. The schools are working on specific plans for their buildings. We're looking for consistency across the elementary and across the secondary, but we recognize that there are differences in each building regarding arrival and dismissal and procedures in the buildings. So the schools are working to fine tune those processes. So we thank the community for their patience. This is a very difficult process. Never in education did we think that we would need to create multiple plans for reentry. We certainly know and recognize that the best instruction is full-time instruction, 5 days a week, in person for all students. Unfortunately, with the size of our enrollment and our space limitations and staffing limitations, we can't bring all of our students back 5 days a week. We certainly hope that this pandemic ends soon enough so that we can get back to business of educating our students on a full-time basis. I really would like to express my appreciation to all of the many stakeholders that are participating in this process, including the staff and the community members who have contacted us with additional suggestions as well as questions. Momentarily, I'll be reading through quite a few questions that were posed on the form in the past few days. And all of the questions via email in this form help us fine tune our plan so we can fully understand what the information is that the community needs. So we are working on a question and answer document that will also provide additional clarity, and we'll get that out to the public hopefully next week. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing again and go to comments on reentry. So as we did at the last meeting, I'll read each comment, and then Ms. Downs, if it's okay with you, I'll try to answer the questions, and then, okay. So we have from Allison Matway in Wading River. In the reopening plan, it was stated that an all virtual option would be provided. Will that choice require a medical note? Right now, that is not the direction that we're looking to go in. We are looking to provide an option to all families that wish to have their children remote. We do have a survey that's going out next week that will give us information. We ask all families to respond to that survey. It will be specific to your children so that we know what your wishes are. We'll give about a week to get those results back. And then the buildings will be trying to contact families that have not responded to the survey. Once we know how many families are looking for remote options fully for their students, we'll have a better plan as to how we're going to meet the needs of those students. So again, it's a work in progress, and we ask for patience as we try to do the best that we can with the situation at hand. For the hybrid option, mask breaks were mentioned. How and when will those happen? We're working on protocols for those. We have committees that are working on that. What about bathroom access? Who will monitor how many children, particularly in the upper grades, will be allowed to use the restrooms, hand washing protocols? So all things are related to bathroom and cleanliness. We're working on procedures for those as well. How will lunches work in cafeteria or auditorium? Right now, we're looking at our K6 students or K4 students to have lunch in the classroom. 6 through 12 will be having lunch in large spaces. So it may not always be the cafeteria. We'll be utilizing other large spaces so that we can socially distance the students and working on a plan to maintain cleanliness after the students move on and a new group of students come in. No masks, but social distancing. We are requiring students to wear masks during the school day, even though they are socially distancing. The Department of Health and the CDC is recommending that as the safest measure. But as you mentioned earlier in your question, we are looking to provide mask breaks throughout the day. How many periods of lunch? Each building has different setups as to what their lunch periods look like, and who will clean in between, particularly the auditorium seats. Our custodial staff is working on plans to make sure that they take care of the cleaning down of surface areas. We're trying to limit the number of surface areas as best we can. The more surface areas we have, the more cleaning needs that we have. So thank you, Mrs. Matway. From Kathleen Cosin from Riverhead. Will the Riverhead School District require all returning students to submit negative COVID tests prior to within 48 hours of their cohort's return to school? Will the district randomly test a percentage of each cohort for COVID-19 to ensure each cohort is not tainted? As we know, young people especially can be asymptomatic while spreading the virus, so temperature checks are practically obsolete. How will you ensure the safety of our children, parents, and teachers? Safety of our students and staff and families is our highest priority. The guidance that school districts has received up to this point does not require testing on the part of the school district. Information that has been shared with superintendents is that school districts are looking to the Department of Health to assist in making sure that testing is done. We are going to temperature check students as they arrive at school. Staff is going to have a daily questionnaire. We'll share information with families to remind them before they put their child on the bus to come to school to review all of the checklists to make sure that their child is well enough to attend school. That's the guidance that we have at this time. Thank you for your question. From Joshua Burns in Riverhead. With many schools in other parts of the country trying to reopen and already closing, do you really think it is safe for our kids to go back to school? How do you think you can possibly keep our children safe? Thank you for your question. We completely understand the uneasiness that members of the community have. All of us here on this call, we either have children or have children in our families that we want what's best for our children, our families. We want to keep everyone as safe as possible. Is this the best situation? Absolutely not. As I said earlier, full in-person instruction with no pandemic is the best situation. We're doing the best that we can. Thank you. Mr. Burns again mentioned about the questionnaire available in August. It will be available next week. From Virginia Scudder in Aquabog, myself and several members of the community would like to know if the psychologists and social workers have made themselves available to our children in the community during the pandemic, and whether or not they have a plan to implement a program come September, as many other communities have already done. This may include, but not limited to, at no cost therapy sessions and parent training. And then a second question from Mrs. Scudder, as a member of the community, she wanted to know if we were implementing some kind of counseling and mindfulness therapy during reentry and beyond, as most other districts have. The first part of your question, our psychologists and social workers were definitely available throughout the spring to assist students and reach out to students and work in full capacity to support all those in need and then some. And they will continue to do so. We have been looking at a variety of programs for social emotional wellness, including Sanford Harmony, some teachers that are working in our summer program with our special ed population. They've been using the program. They have found it beneficial, and we're continuing to explore other options to engage our students, because we know when they come back to school, whether it be in person, remote, or combination, that this is a traumatic experience. And so we do have 2 superintendent conference days in September instead of 1. So a lot of that time is going to be for the teachers to help support them and give them direction on how to help their students health-wise and social emotionally. Thank you for your question. From John Grodsky in Wading River. Shame on you for this reentry plan. You are failing our children and families by placing unfair and inequitable burdens on us in the midst of a global pandemic and significant economic decline. The financial burden of childcare will be crippling for many families in our community, but it will be suffocating for our poorest families and their children. And please don't tell us what other districts are doing. We don't care. We keep hearing about how we have to live with declining outcomes in Riverhead because Riverhead is unique. So how about some solutions unique to Riverhead? How do you expect families to pay for childcare? Will the school district be issuing a 60% school tax refund to help offset the massive cost of private childcare, since students will only be in school 40% of the time? Do we know what effect it will have on the mental well-being of our children if they have to be shuttled and shipped around to 3 or 4 different places during the course of a week, as we are left to cobble together childcare now that reentry plans have come out with 4 weeks until the start of school, and all childcare facilities are either out of business or booked? Will all students be receiving a device? If remote learning occurs, teachers make contact at the elementary level twice a week, but that contact can be a variety of things. Teachers can simply send emails, but if one sends emails and another does video, how is that an equal education for our children? Mr. Grodsky, I completely understand your concerns here. The points that you bring up are valid. This, again, is not an easy situation. I completely understand what you're saying. The childcare issue is a burden for families. We wish that was not the case. It is not something at this time the school district can provide for space reasons, budget reasons, and staffing reasons. As we find out of more information from the county as to childcare options, we'll be sharing that information with families on our website. We're looking to have devices for all students in need, and we're working towards a one-to-one device initiative. We're hopeful we'll be able to make that happen within the next school year, that we will be able to provide students, whether they're in-person instruction or full-time after pandemic, post-pandemic instruction. We're hopeful that we'll get to a point in the next year or so where we will have one device for every student that they can bring back and forth to school, use at home and at school. That is a priority of this Board of Education, and we're working towards that. And as for the instruction, We're working with the teachers to identify the expectations for remote instruction, especially if we move to a full remote instruction option like we had in the spring. It will look different than it did in the spring because we have learned a lot from the spring. And we have committees that include all stakeholders, including community members, and we're listening. And there's no easy options here, but we're doing the best that we can, and we certainly want the best for our students. From Jennifer S. in Flanders, are there guidelines yet for number or days to quarantine when a student in a class or on a bus, a teacher, a staff member, et cetera, becomes sick for both for that person as well as those in contact with that person? What is going to initiate a stay-at-home isolation in school or send to be tested? Yes, we're working on those protocols and waiting for further guidance from the agencies, the local agencies, to help partner with us so that we know exactly what's expected of us. But we are going to take the health of everyone seriously. We have isolation rooms planned. There'll be our nursing staff and our administrators at the buildings will be monitoring, as well as the teachers, the health of the students throughout the day, and taking swift action if someone should not feel well. From Leah Petrignani in Aquabog, if we choose to opt into full remote for our elementary school age children, will there be any live or recorded teaching? Also, in the reopening plan, it appears that if we are remote, the child will only have 2 contacts with their teacher per week. I find this unacceptable. I understand the teachers are overwhelmed, but our children need more than 2 contacts per week. Yes, we understand the concerns. And when we have elementary cohorts, we do have 2 cohorts, a Monday, Tuesday cohort and a Thursday, Friday cohort. Wednesdays, the teachers will be using that to make additional contacts with students, plan for remote instruction on the days that the cohort is home. But please remember that on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, the teachers have students in front of them all day. So this is a challenge for the teachers as well as for the families and the students. And we're going to do the best that we can. And these are conversations that we're having on a daily basis to try to maximize instruction for our students. From Allison Matway in Wading River, Governor Cuomo suggested that all parents and teachers ask these questions regarding in-person instruction. What is the representative sample that you'll be taking to project and extrapolate for the population in each school to see the spread of COVID? How often are you going to test? How are you going to test? Where are you getting the tests? What's the turnaround time on the tests? What are the provisions for an infected person and all the other people they came in contact with? What about contact tracing? What's the spread rate? How do other illnesses affect spread rate? Again, I mentioned this earlier. School districts are not equipped to test. That's not our role as a school district to provide medical testing. So I do believe that the governor has issued a statement after this statement I believe he made on Monday, where we are to partner with the Department of Health, which is what we have been doing and will continue to do for guidance and any information regarding testing and contact tracing. From Amanda Goltz in Aquabog, in regards to a waiver every day saying kids' temperature has been taken and they are okay to go to school, how will this be monitored? Will it fall at the waist of those who don't have access to technology to fill out the form? How will this be enforced? What will be done if a child comes to school sick or has a fever? For drop-off pickup lines, how will this be facilitated? I mentioned earlier, we're not asking parents to complete a form in the morning before they send their students to school. We are going to ask them to review the symptoms and the items at home to make sure their children are well enough to attend school, just as we would expect parents to do that during pre and post-pandemic times. As the children arrive at school, they'll be temperature checked, but they'll be monitored all day long. And if anyone notices or the child notices that they're not feeling well, they will receive medical attention right away. We will have isolation rooms ready, and parents or guardians will be notified to pick their children up from school. Regarding drop-off and pickup, the individual schools are making provisions to make that as efficient as possible. and they will be included in the specific building procedures that will be shared soon. From Laura Huber in Calverton, when are we going to find out what cohorts the students are going to be in? I know typically we find out towards the end of August, but for those who need to make childcare arrangements, earlier would be better. So on grades 7 through 12, the cohorts are alphabetical. So it's A through F, G through N, and O through Z. So those 3 groups of students will go 2 days in a 6-day rotation, 2 consecutive days. On the elementary level, there's a Monday, Tuesday cohort and a Thursday, Friday cohort. We're looking to keep siblings together as often as possible, unless a family requests otherwise. So K6 siblings will be together, 7-12 siblings will be together. And on K6, if there's a specific request that for childcare reasons, a Monday to Tuesday in-person cohort is better for your family, please reach out to your building principal and they will make those accommodations for the families that request them. So those questions will also be included in the survey that's going home next week. So you'll be able to tell us if there's a specific request regarding cohorts. From Kathy Berezny in Riverhead. How much classroom teaching seat time will students receive during this class scheduling during pandemic phase on a 5-day week? So I had mentioned grades 7 through 12, they will get in-person instruction 2 days out of every 6. And K6 students will get in-person instruction 2 days out of every 5. She goes on to say, virtual classroom tool is better than Google Classroom teaching. Virtually, teacher can be teaching to the students as a group or one-on-one. Busy worksheets are left to deal with left to deal with work on their own is not educating the whole student. How are you making sure that all students have working internet-based connections to do the work? Chromebooks have links, but in reality, they should have the curriculum work in their Chromebooks for the year. Everyone online, the links crash at times. Cost to load curriculum is why I'm sure you're not doing this. We are here for students' well-being and their right to the best education we can provide. Speaking to that, we do have partnerships with companies for internet. The devices that we're purchasing, we're looking to have internet built in for the students that are in need of internet that they don't have access at home. And we're looking to, we purchased in the spring additional devices that allow for individual Wi-Fi access in a home that doesn't have Wi-Fi access. So we're exploring all options to try to make sure that all the students are connected when they're at home. Regarding the Chromebooks, Chromebook, you open it up and it links to the internet. So Google Classroom is an internet-based platform. So the students know how to, if they don't know, they will taught when they come back to school how to access Google Classroom. We use a product called Clever, which is a one login sign-in for students that will allow them to access all of the platforms for learning that are virtual. So there is no way to load information. There's no hard drive in a Chromebook. It's different from a computer. So it is truly an access to get onto anything that's internet-based. Next question from Mrs. Berezny. Will parents be getting childcare services for the off time provided by the school district? As I mentioned earlier, at this time, no, we do not have that option. We're not able to provide that option for families. We are looking to offer Rascals after school and before school childcare in our elementary schools. So more information will be shared with parents as we finalize those plans. Number 3 for Mrs. Berezny, will there be a prorated real estate tax for taxpayers in the near future as parents are teaching students at home after their working jobs? Unfortunately, we're not able to do that. In the spring, all of our employees, by executive order from the governor, we continue to pay our employees. And so even though we may not have had all of the buses on the road at the same time, we had a couple of buses on the road to help us with meal distribution, but we still paid all of the employees. So the budget savings was not as great in personnel. It really wasn't much of a budget savings in personnel costs in the spring. We're looking to provide the best education we can moving forward. And we need the staff to do that. So the biggest component of our school budget is staffing. So we aren't able to give any prorated tax breaks. The next question from Mrs. Bresney: will special education students get all of their services as they are entitled to? Yes, we're working very closely with our special education department. They're looking at IEPs. They're trying to provide all of the services that the students are entitled to. And that's definitely a goal for us. And we tried to do that as well in the spring. And the next question: teachers are essential employees, but at this rate, it seems they are non-essential as parents opting for other ways to educate their children. It may have hurt us all in the end, and only time will tell. So thank you, Ms. Bresney, for your comment. Next one I have is from Shannon Wrights from Riverhead. These questions pertain to the high school. Can teachers be required to provide a syllabus at least quarterly to provide clear communication on what will be expected of the students each week? That is definitely something that the high school can look to do. I know a lot of the teachers do provide syllabuses at the beginning of the school year or quarterly, and that's a conversation we can have because that will help with the communication as the students are between home and in-school instruction. What measure will be put in place to hold teachers accountable for effectively teaching if fully remote? And then Mrs. Wrights wants to give a shout out to Ms. Malahy as she rocked parent communication and had very clear expectations during the fourth quarter at the high school. So I know Ms. Malahy will be very happy to know that she got that shout out. Thank you. Many of our teachers, they were navigating a difficult time. Using technology remotely wasn't something that any of us were trained to do in our teacher preparation courses or in our careers. We've all been trained to teach students when they're in front of us. So we took the spring and learned from it. We've been offering a lot of workshops over the summer. The RCFA, our Teachers Association, they worked together last spring to provide instruction to each other. They did a great job. We're going to continue as a district to provide opportunities for professional development for our teachers. And we're hoping that once we're post-pandemic, we will have a much stronger use of technology in the classroom to help with instruction. And there's always a silver lining, and that's one of them. If fully remote, can textbooks be provided or learning materials that will be needed? We have partnered with a lot of our publishing companies in the spring, and we'll continue to look to see if the textbooks that we use are available digitally as well. And that would be the easiest way and the safest way for students to access curriculum and materials, because we don't want to use too many tangible materials, because if students touch them and another student touches them, we need to do the sanitization on the surfaces. So wherever we can bring in digital supports, we're going to continue to do that. Can extra credit options be mandatory to provide for students to utilize to enhance their grades if needed? We are going back to a full grading system, a traditional grading system for this school year, whether we're remote or in person or hybrid. So teachers choose to embed extra credit into their courses as they see fit. So that's something that's an individual teacher's discretion. How will science labs operate if fully remote? The guidance that we did receive from the state education department says that we are to do labs, but they can be remote. So the teachers, the science teachers, will be working on options for students to be able to complete not necessarily experiments from home, but modified work that would count towards the lab requirement. What district support is there if a family chooses to homeschool? Now, if a family chooses to homeschool, they need to contact our PPS office at 20 School Street and let them know of their intent to homeschool. And then they will be given a packet of information. Homeschooling is not something that the district provides. Parents use the guidance from state education department to meet the learning standards for the students. And they provide to the school district on a quarterly basis updates of how the student is doing on the study at home. And ultimately, if a student completes homeschooling and is of the age to graduate high school, so to speak, they do not receive a diploma as a homeschooled student, but they receive, if all of the requirements have been met throughout the years provided to the school district, they would get a certificate of completion. Homeschool students can move on and have full careers, college, military, all sorts of options as a homeschool student once they reach the age that they're complete. What is the district's stance on accepting homeschool credits and presenting a high school diploma to homeschool students? I just mentioned that in the answer. That is not something that school districts provide. They do not provide a diploma to a homeschool student. It is a certificate of completion, and that is as per education law. And if a child is homeschooled for 11th and possibly 12th grade, are they still able to take advantage of the early college, the Suffolk Community College early college program? That's something that we are looking into. So we're not sure until we get guidance from Suffolk Community College if that is an option for homeschooled students, and that would be the reduced tuition rate. So once we have that information, we will definitely share that back out. Thank you, Mrs. Wright. Okay. Next question is from Tracy Evans in Riverhead. Our firstborn will be entering kindergarten this year, and we are considering an all remote option. Though this is certainly not what we had planned for our son, we feel at this time, with so many variables, it is the safest option. The research for a vaccine looks promising. If we change our minds mid-year, will we have an opportunity to do so and reintegrate him back into school? Or are we stuck with remote learning through the end of the school year? Are there any trainings offered for parents on how to use proposed educational platforms, or are we on our own to figure it out? Lastly, with regard to verifying a student's residence, when we enrolled our son in the district when he was entering preschool, we were required to submit proof of residence. I was surprised to not have to undergo some of the same measures for his entry into kindergarten. Do you not require families to continually submit proof of residence year after year? Okay, so there's a few questions here. If you choose the full remote option instead of the hybrid where the student comes to school a couple of days a week, we are looking to allow families to make that change if they wish. It may not be an immediate change if that request is made. We do have to make sure that we have all of the staffing in place because we can't. It's difficult. It's difficult to plan for staffing and not knowing how many students are going to be remote and how many are going to be in person. But we are looking to work with families as best as we can. We understand all of the constraints that are on families at this time. This is a very difficult process, so we will work with families. Trainings for parents. Yes, we actually talked about that in the spring, about putting together some parent training options, having some of our teachers do some evening Zoom calls for parents that are interested in learning how to access the programs to better help their children at home, as well as we have a partnership with Long Island Regional Consultants, where they too would be able to offer some evening or afternoon workshops for parents to just help give strategies when you have children at home and you're helping them with their instruction. So yes, we will be providing some parent workshops, so be on the lookout for those. Regarding the student's residence, as a preschool student, for kindergarten, if you are a preschool student within our district, a lot of that information can roll over into kindergarten registration. We do not require, as per law, an annual registration process. That is not what we're allowed to do. If we have a question, if someone raises a question about a particular student's residency, we do investigate at that time, and we can require the family in question to provide documents to prove to us that they still live at that residence. But note where the New York State says that we are not to re-register students on an annual basis. From Mr. Donovan in Riverhead, paragraph 4 of the reentry plan, the first sentence states, equity will be at the heart of all school instructional decisions. Kindly define the term equity as it pertains to in-person learning. For example, as a matter of equity, will children living legally within the town of Riverhead the longest be offered full-time in-person schooling prior to the students legally living here for less time? Furthermore, who makes the decision of what is equitable, and will that equitable determination undermine the equity owed other students? That line came straight from the assurances on the New York State Education Department's reentry plan. That was one of the assurances that school districts had to provide, that we would be providing equity in our plans. And when we say equity, if it's a special education student, that we're going to provide the supports to that student. If it's an English language learner, we'll provide the supports to that student. Students who need remediation, we're providing supports to those students. If a student needs a device, a computer device and internet access, are we able to provide those things so that we can provide all of the services that each individual student needs? And we recognize that not every student needs the same services. So that's what we're assuring to the State Education Department, that we're not providing a one-size-fits-all model of education to all the students in the district. We've never done that before, and we will not ever do that, because we know all of our students are different and they have different needs. From Margaret Kidney in Calverton, I don't understand for kindergarten or K-6 why you did not take a poll to find out who wanted to homeschool and who wanted to send their kids to school before coming up with your proposed plan. My husband and I both work full-time jobs, and we're not equipped to teach our 7 and 10-year-olds for the 3 days that they are not in school. What are we supposed to do with this plan? How are our children going to learn anything? I understand your concern. We were charged with putting together a reentry plan, and we didn't have necessarily all of the information all at the same time. A lot of the information, the plans were due the July 31st. It wasn't until July 10th or so that I think we got direction from the State Education Department and the Department of Health as to specifics of what needed to be in those plans. We had meetings prior to that, but without knowing specifically what was expected, it was difficult to know what to put in the plan. So we did have the initial survey. We didn't feel it was fair to ask families to commit to something before they knew what the plan looked like and before we knew what the direction of the governor was. That's why we intend to put the survey out next week. That is a more specific survey to where you'll say the name of your child, the school, the grade, and what your specific needs are for those individual children in your family. So we're hopeful that the governor is going to share more information with us tomorrow, but our plan is next week to send that survey out, whether we get that direction from the governor or not, because we recognize that it's almost mid-August and we need to know. So thank you. From Heather McHugh in Riverhead, how is the district planning to assist working parents who now have daycare needs? Again, we wish that there was more that we could provide as a school district, but once we learn of programs that are available, we'll make that available to our families. From Donna Lonigro in Wading River, regarding the hybrid model for grades 7 through 12, when the students are home, how will the distant learning portions be done? Will the students be required to attend the classes as they would in school or be online at certain times? Also, how will the teachers be able to teach the kids at home if they're teaching the kids that are in school? It seems as though this is a difficult task for the teachers as well as the students. Exactly. You hit the nail right on the head. We are working with our 712 teachers to create a model where there is some recording of lessons or information from the lessons when they have students in front of them, but you won't see the students or necessarily the teacher. You'll see information from their lessons with a voiceover, but it will be, we're hoping, live, because we recognize that the teachers can't do two things at the same time. And then each day, the teachers will post by the end of the day the recordings that they've made, and we don't expect the students to have those done that same day, because if a teacher records an 8th period lesson, they can't post it until after 8th period, but the assumption would be that the students would do those lessons the next day. So, and the idea behind this is that we recognize that if students are in for 1/3 of the time, we can't teach them 1/3 of the curriculum. We need to get through the entire curriculum to best prepare our students for the next grade and life in general, moving on. So this is the way that we're working to plan for this. So more specifics will be shared, and we'll be training our teachers on how to best use this technology to provide the information for students on a daily basis. From Jane Netwich in Aquabog. Is there any way the district can have the children attend school on the same days each week using hybrid model for grades 7 through 12? For working parents as well as teachers in the district who have families, this seems to be a difficult task. As a parent of a preteen, I wouldn't want them to be home by themselves all day, 4 days a week. I'm sure there are many other parents with similar concerns. And given the circumstances due to the failed budget, has the district looked into portables to help with the overcrowding and social distance guidelines? So the first part of the question, I think I mentioned earlier, if you have children in multiple grades, you could definitely ask for them to be in the same cohort. The principals are going to try to put them in the same cohort. Something to think about, people who have elementary children and middle school and high school, you might want to have your middle school and high school students in different cohorts, because then they'll be home on different days and that might better match up with your elementary students to help with childcare. But every family is different, but that was something that we considered as an option, but families can choose to have their students on the same days or different days on 7/12. And the portables, portables require SED, New York State Education Department approval. It takes a while to get that approval and they are quite expensive to put into play. So the district has had conversations about portables over the years. We have a few portables around the district already, but it is not a quick or economical way to provide space. So thank you for your question. From Virginia Scudder in Aquabog, she's curious to know when the staff is going to be trained for reopening and who or what organization plans to do the training. Some of the responsibilities of the school district is to make sure that all of the staff is trained in identifying symptoms of COVID, making sure that they're aware of social emotional needs of students and where to get proper supports. So those are all topics that we'll be covering with the staff on September 1st and 2nd during our 2 superintendents conference days. And regarding any technology training for the teachers, we've made options available to them throughout the summer. And again, those 2 days, as well as throughout the school year, we'll be providing options for our staff to make sure that they have training that they need in programs and in technology. From Steve Marr in Calverton, he's asking what action will or can be taken if a student or staff member refuses to wear a mask. So those will be dealt with on a individual person basis. Everyone will know what the expectation is. If a student refuses to wear a mask, the building administration, the teachers in the classroom, they'll deal with the student accordingly. We're not looking to punish people, but we're trying to educate people to the safety and the need to keep others safe as well as themselves. So staff, the expectation will be everyone wears a mask. So staff is aware of that. And if they're in an office that they're able to not be around other people, then that's a different situation. But we've had these conversations already. And as the staff comes back from summer vacation, those will be very serious conversations that we'll be having. So thank you for your question. From Monique Parsons in Bating Hollow, will teachers utilize an interactive platform to teach students in the district as if they were sitting in front of them when remote learning is to begin? For example, Zoom, Office 365, or another platform? If not, how will students and teachers be held accountable for learning? How will students be able to get answers to their questions while learning is taking place? Like I mentioned before, the teachers will always have students in front of them, except elementary teachers on Wednesdays. So it is definitely something that we're working on, and we have committees that are working to figure out specific procedures. But we do ask that families have patience, that teachers can't do 2 things at the same time. So if they're educating students in front of them, we can't ask them to also be communicating via a platform with students that are home. So it's definitely going to be a challenge for all of us. So we recognize that, and we're working towards specific procedures. How many devices does the district currently have for students registered in the district, specifically Chromebooks and laptops? I had the number here earlier today. We've got about 1,000. Yeah. We have about 2,300 devices right now, but we're in process of purchasing additional devices. So we're hopeful that we'll have a one-to-one process for devices by the beginning of next school year, if not before. So we're exploring all options and avenues to make that happen. But students who are in need of devices, we will be providing those again. So thank you for your question. And question also about how is the district handling students that are unaware of how to use a computer? So we do have a plan, and hopefully we start out with in-person instruction on the hybrid approach that our librarians will be, when they work with the students, in addition to the classroom teachers, there's going to be a push at the very beginning from the first day to make sure the students know how to log on to devices. So that if we need to abruptly go to full remote, or the fact that they will be remote for part of the week, that they will be able to access the programs. On the elementary level, also, we've had lots of conversations that we don't want the students in front of a screen 5 days a week. So while we know that they'll be in person 2 days a week, those other 3 days, it's not going to be all computer-based instruction. The beauty of having 2 days in person is that the teacher can communicate with the students, work on this over the next 3 days, bring this back when you come back next week, and that communication in person will be invaluable. So it won't be all screen time. That's the plan. How many new registrants did the district take in thus far for the 2020-21 school year? In the next part of my presentation, I will touch on that. And how is the district planning to track the mental health of students while not in school? Teachers cannot report what they cannot see, especially if there is no plan for continuous instruction via a method where the student can interact with their teachers and classmates during remote learning designated dates. Yes, we do have mental health professionals in the district, and they will be reaching out to students as well as other staff members in the buildings. So we have a great mental health staff in district, and they are fully aware of the needs that these students are going to have when they return after being not in school buildings for about 6 months. And the last question on reentry from Steve Morin Calverton: is the school district liable if any employee or student contracts COVID-19 while within school grounds or buses? And if yes, what is being done to prevent losing such a lawsuit? And this one, I'm going to turn over to our attorney, Mr. Ranieri. Sorry, I didn't give you a heads up, Mr. Ranieri, and you're muted.
I'm good now. Yep.
I can hear you.
All right. Yeah. Sorry, I was muted. I couldn't unmute myself. Generally speaking, as long as you're putting the proper protocols in place, it's not something you're going to be held liable for. I mean, you know, I'd be concerned to the extent that there's any gross negligence or intentional actions taking place. But, you know, to the extent that you're putting the proper protocols in place pursuant to CDC guidance and pursuant to the guidance that you've been getting from the State Education Department, I think you're going to be pretty well insulated from liability on that. That being said, the COVID-19 world is a new world, and there's no volume of case law on point. So, you know, it is going to kind of be a wait and see to a certain extent. But, you know, my feeling, you know, pulling from other areas of the law, is to the extent that you do what you're supposed to do and put in place, again, the proper protocols, you should be fairly well insulated from liability.
Okay, thank you. All right, and I'm not done. I still have more to my report, so I'm going to attempt to share the screen again.
You done now with your report?
No, I still have 2 more pieces to it.
No?
Christine, could I just say something to that portion of what you just reported to everyone?
Sure.
Okay. So I just want to acknowledge the superintendent, the deputy superintendent, my fellow board members, teachers and all staff, and certainly our community members. This is an extremely challenging time with COVID and our reentry program, and equally challenging with our failed budget. I am a stakeholder, and I believe the district is doing the best they can given the circumstances. I know the community feels let down in all ways. I do as well. I just want to ask that you please allow the Board of Education and the district to work towards creating trust and faith through our new efforts. It will certainly take time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Husky. All right. Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Okay.
Yes.
That's always good. All right, so there we go. So tonight we're beginning a new process where I will report on the previous month's enrollment changes and residency concerns. I'll continue to present this information to the board at the first board meeting of every month. So here are the new registrations for the month of July. Please note that Riverhead has not been experiencing the increase in enrollment from families coming from New York City as some of our neighboring districts to the east have been experiencing. Regarding residency, concerns regarding 14 students were shared with the district in 2019-20. 3 of those students withdrew from the district due to non-residency. We are following up on several that were started just prior to the school closure. Again, I'll share this information monthly moving forward. And if any residents have specific information to share regarding residency concerns, we encourage the use of the Share It button on our website, or you can notify any of our administrators, including myself, and we'll continue to investigate all concerns brought to our attention. And at our last meeting, a request was made to review the data regarding our English language learners, the length of time they've been in the program, and the number of students who have exited. Wait, I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. Are you seeing my notes now, or are you seeing the regular screen?
We're seeing how many ELLs.
That's all you see. Okay, so you don't need to see all my notes. Thank you. Sorry about that. So here is a snapshot of our total enrollment, the number of Ls and the number of former Ls that are still enrolled. Our Ls exit the ENL program, English as a new language program, and Ls are English language learners. After they take the NYSSLAT, which is their proficiency exam that's given every spring, the English language arts assessment in grades 3 through 8, or if they pass the English Regents and score at the expanding level on the NYSSLAT. 132 students exited in 2018-19, but since we only have the January English language arts Regents this year, and all other assessments were canceled because of the pandemic, we don't have any information on the number of students that would have tested out of the English as a new language program. So we had 11 students in January that came out of ENL because they passed the program. But we don't have any information on 3/8 testing or the June Regents because that didn't happen. I'm being told that you could still see my notes. So let me try this again.
It gets so small, I couldn't see them.
That's okay. Can you see my notes now? Okay. In a second, I'm just going to read it with the notes, and it's okay. I have nothing to hide here. Okay, you may see my notes. I'm just going to go.
They're not secret.
I know, they're not secret. It's just that this is, sorry about that. All right, so here's a snapshot of our total enrollment, the number of English language learners that we have, and the number of former English language learners that are still enrolled. So these former English language learners were enrolled in the program, but they've exited because they either reached proficiency on the annual exam, or they've reached proficiency on the 3.8 assessment in English language arts, as well as reached the expanding level on their proficiency exam, or they scored a 65 or higher on the English language arts Regents exam, and also reached expanding level on their proficiency exam. So 132 students exited in 2018-19, but because we didn't take the tests this year, there's only 11 that we know of. The state has said that all of the students, whatever level they were on in 2019-20, they're going to continue on that level in 2020-21. So while we would have typically exited some students, we're not going to exit students this year. And so the number of English language learners will most likely rise for the 2020-21 school year. So this chart shows our current English language learner totals. And you can see in that peachy color, those are students with disabilities. So the year that the student entered the district is on the left in green. And some students arrive mid-year or even May or June, and that counts as year one in the state's eyes. So whether they've had a full year of instruction or a month's worth of instruction, that's their year one. So if you look at the high school, currently, and when I say currently, through June, 454 English language learners. 363 of them were enrolled in an English language learner program for 5 years or less. That's 80% of them. 28 of them have been enrolled in a program for 6 or 7 years. And 63 of them have been enrolled in an English language learner program for 8 or more years. But if we take out the students who also are students with disabilities, there's only 24 students who are in the high school that have been in the ENL program for 8 or more years. And research says that it takes a student with no prior instruction or no support in their native language at least 7 years to reach language proficiency. So based on that—
Christine, can I ask a question?
Yes.
On this? I thought I saw somewhere that after 7 years, you don't have to provide services for ENL anymore if they've been in the program for 7 years or more.
No, they're considered long-term Ls, but we still have to provide services until they exit in one of those three manners: by the NYSESLAT, the end of the year proficiency exam, the 3.8 ELA assessment with an expanding level on the NYSESLAT, or passing the English Regents with an expanding level on the NYSESLAT.
Okay, because I find these numbers disturbing.
Do you want to expand on that?
I don't see why somebody would be in the program that long, that they come in and they've been in a program longer than 3 or 4 years. They should be proficient in English.
Mr. Dorr, research shows, that's why you'll see when I go to the next slide, the majority of our students exit when they're in Pulaski or the middle school, because that's when they hit the 5 to 7 year mark. Remember that some of these students, if they've been in 8 years, they might be an 11th grader, but they may not have come into the country until they were a 3rd grader. Because when we look at the number of years that they've been in a program, in an English language learner program in New York State, we're counting any district in New York State. So they may have come to us, and we track that data, and we find out from the previous school if they received English language learner services. But some students come from out of country, and they come in at the age of 10, And if they're still in the high school at the age of 18, it's more difficult at the older you are to learn the language. It's more natural at a younger age, but research shows 5 to 7 years to master the language.
Well, I'm looking at our English speaking students that are required to take a foreign language and be mastery in 3 years to pass the Regents. Spanish, French, Latin, whatever, within 3 years, our English speaking students have to be proficient in a Regents in order to get a Regents diploma.
Yes, but that's a different level of proficiency. It's more of an educational level of proficiency as opposed to a working level of proficiency that you're going to use on a every day, all the time basis.
But these students should be immersed in an English speaking school where they're learning English more than a regular student taking a French class every other day. I guess the numbers of students that are in here longer than 4 years, I just think are way too many.
I could see if we could get data from a similar district and compare it that way, and just to see what their percentages of students, where their bump is. I'm pretty confident that at the Pulaski Middle School level, that's where the biggest bump of students who reach proficiency in English language learner in the end of year exam, the NICESLAT. That's where it happens. And the majority of the students do start with us in kindergarten. And that's why that 5 to 7 year range happens at Pulaski Middle. But then we do have a large population of students that come into the district as a teenager, 14, 15, 16, and they come from places where they may not have had formal instruction or limited formal instruction. They may not be proficient in their native language, and they may be able to speak it, but they certainly can't read it or write it. And that there's a lot of language dissonance that happens because they understand something by speaking it or listening to it, but they can't write it or read it in their native language. And then they're coming in and they're trying to learn a new language. And that's the difficult part. Those are the students that that struggle the most, that are not exiting the program.
Well, and I just look at this and I know that 2 out of every 3 ELLs drop out of Riverhead schools. And if we're keeping them in this program that long, I don't know, I still can't comprehend why we've had, I can't do the math off the top of my head, but from year 7 up for the total K to 12s, why we have that many students still in the ELL program. I think we have to really reevaluate how we're educating these ELL students.
No, I share what you're saying. I share your frustrations, Mr. Dorr. We'll continue to look to see how we can.
It's not cheap for us to educate, and we've been cited because we have to get so many ENL teachers and ELL teachers. They shouldn't be. My feeling is they shouldn't be in the program more than 4 years. They should be able to learn English, be proficient enough to pass a test, especially if they're coming to us in kindergarten.
If I can just jump in, I do think we have to address it. I think we have to look at the blueprint for the ENL language learners that the state has put out. And Christine, you had brought up about looking at other districts that are also dealing with comparable, students. And I think that we should have better outcomes, and we're going to have to work towards that.
And we are. And there's been new programs put in place. I'll touch upon them in the next slide. And we continue to explore the programs that we can offer our students so that we can meet them where they are and move them forward.
So the high school kids, though, do we know how many of them came in later, already as high school or already as middle school?
Well, you can see here on this slide, or maybe you can't because it's small, but if you look at the last two columns where it says Riverhead High School, where it says all. So at the high school, at the bottom, it says 2019-20 year one, there's 132 students that were in year one of ENL services at the high school. There's 102 students at the high school in year two, 27 kids in year three, 59 in year four. Right there,
right, okay.
254, 261, 270. That's 320 students right there that have only started learning English when they came to the high school in those first 4 years.
Right.
So yeah, that's the majority of the students, and that was 80% of the high school students. There's 363 of them that have been attending an English language learner program for 5 years or less. So it's the other 20% that, yes, we share your frustrations and how can we better meet their needs. Some of them are also students with disabilities where they have other learning issues that are preventing them from perhaps learning the language, and they can't pass the test, maybe not because of their level of English, but because of their disability that's preventing them from passing the test. But we continue to look to improve what we do, meet the students where they are, and provide the best education. And our goal is to exit them. It truly is. So this next slide talks about who are our former Ls. So these students exited the program. It's not the total amount that have exited each year, because these are the exited students that are still enrolled in the district. There are some students who have graduated or transferred out of the district. And the largest number of English language learners that exit are at Pulaski in the middle school. And that's appropriate, as I mentioned before, because it takes 5 to 7 years to master a language. Phillips saw a nice increase in 2019, and that was probably due to the fact that they have the transitional bilingual program. And we've been working hard, and the staff at Phillips works very hard to meet the needs of their students. And then Pulaski saw an increase in 2018, and that was when we moved towards a dual language bilingual program. So the students at Pulaski, and we've expanded that in recent years, to give students some instruction in Spanish and some instruction in English, depending on the content. And research shows that if you can truly make a student bilingual in not only speaking and listening, but also in reading, writing, they will be stronger students overall. So that's the goal of a bilingual program.
Now, if I did my math right, we're only exiting about 8% of our Ls. About 132 out of roughly 1,700.
But this doesn't show all of the Ls. Kids that have graduated or have moved out of the district. These are the ones that are still enrolled. So we have 538 students that are considered former Ls, and they have either passed the NYSESLAT within the past 2 years. They're considered commanding. We still have to give them support for 2 years after they reach proficiency, or they've reached proficiency more than 2 years ago, and they're still considered a former L.
Okay.
We understand that this is definitely an area that we are continuing to address. If there's more specific questions that you'd like me to research, I'd be happy to do so. Let me know what they are, and we'll look into those, and I can do a follow-up presentation. So I am proud of the work that our teachers do, our ENL teachers, as well as our classroom teachers, and the work that they're doing to meet the needs of our English language learners. All of our teachers, they work closely with Denise Stevenson, Liz Scaduto, and all of our building administrators to provide the best education possible. We're proud of their efforts and dedication. So that's it for that part of my update.
Thank you, Ms. Tono. All right, now we're going to go into contingency budget. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you, Mr. Healy. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank
Ms. Debs, you
Ms.
mean consent agenda, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Any comments, cares, or concerns?
Lori, I
Yes.
just had a question about the employee professional personnel, number 18.
Okay.
I've just been getting a lot of questions from parents whose kids were referred and for evaluation, and just curious, the hours were adjusted from, I can't remember the exact number, maybe 28 to not to exceed 200 hours.
Are you looking number 18?
Number 18, it says
sure it's 18?
Professional.
Professional personnel, number 18, the not to exceed 200 hours.
I thought I saw it as 19 on my version.
Oh, is it 19? Hold on. Well, do we see where it says, 1 second.
This person was originally 28 hours.
Mine
and
says
now it's
18, not to exceed,
Mine is 18 too.
not to exceed 200 hours.
You might have the hard copy from agenda review, and we've made a couple of adjustments since then.
Okay, so this is the
No, this
adjustment
came
to
off
special
the-
education extended school year program.
Right. I think you're referring to number 19.
Okay, so if it's on my paper, it's number 18. If it's number 19, then that's the one that I would like to talk towards. So can you just explain to me how it went from 28 to not to exceed 200 hours when it's summer program?
I think it was an error on the first agenda, and this is to correct that. We put up to on the number of hours so that we make sure that we're able to compensate the employees that are working in the summer. I don't know how much I could say in public. I think I could generalize where some employees might also be doing some testing for CSE meetings as well. I know this says adjustment to extended school year program.
Okay, so if we need to have further discussion, is that something,
I could find out more specifics to that if you want to pull it from the agenda, and if we have a meeting next week, put that on the agenda.
Can we table that?
okay,
Yes.
I'd like to take a vote to table number 19 on the agenda. Can I have a motion?
motion,
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis,
Yes.
Mr. Wallace. Oh, he's gone. He had to go to his thing.
he had a meeting.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes,
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Number 19 is tabled to next meeting, which is what, August 11th? We're having a meeting?
You'll have to decide that, but you could say for the next meeting.
Okay.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now we have to redo the consent agenda, right? Without number 19 in it.
You still have a motion on the table.
I still have the motion on the table?
Yes.
Okay, so I could just go through everybody and take it the way it is now with that pulled out?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis,
Yes.
Mrs. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes,
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
and myself. Motion passes. Okay. Now we're up to, we got old business. This is the contingency budget options. And it is the discussion. Mr. Ranieri, could you please, first, before we start, cite the law for contingency?
Sure. And I know, Ms. Tony, you have this in your presentation, so if you could just
Yes.
potentially.
Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay.
So just to reiterate what's already in here, the laws of the contingent budget generally found in Education Law 2601-A, 2023, and 2023-A. When the tax cap was put into play, it limited tax levy increases on a contingency budget to nothing higher than the prior year's levy. And that came into play again when the tax cap came in. The rules of spending under a contingent budget have been in place for a number of years and have been evolving through case law over that period of time. And speaking mostly general terms, you can spend money on legal obligations, expenditures specifically authorized by statute, and other items necessary to maintain the educational program, preserve your property, and ensure the health and safety of students and staff. You can't have appropriations for equipment. You can't have increases to salaries of individually contracted staff. You cannot allow outside organizations to use your facilities unless the cost is paid in full. So those are the general pieces. On an item by item basis, the authority is generally found in case law, and it's a little bit difficult to speak in general terms without knowing specific items. So if there's ever any specific item that the board wants further discussion on with regard to whether it's an ordinary contingent expense, we're happy to have that discussion with the board.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any questions or comments on that before we move on? So what is the contingent budget? So for 2020-21, the contingent budget could be no higher than $144,814,131. And that it represents a budget to budget increase of 0.27% and a tax levy increase of 0%. So the board tonight is going to look to remove $2.3 million, exactly $2,310,764,000, which must be removed from the rejected budget so that we can move forward with the 2020-21 school year. So there's nothing here that's easy. Every item that's listed here is here for a reason, because that helps make our school district operate efficiently, provides programs for students, provides academics and extracurriculars and athletics. There's no easy choices here. So tonight, Board of Education, you have a very difficult charge ahead of you. So on this list is one recommended way that we can get to that $2.3 million amount. And if you'd like, I'll go through each of the lines so you have a better idea of what each represents.
Yes, please.
Okay, so equipment is here because required under the law that Mr. Ranieri just shared, we cannot have any equipment purchases. And equipment purchase is anything that costs more than $500. Raises for individually contracted staff. These are not bargaining units, but these are the individual contracts. Those individuals cannot have raises. So that's $57,025 that can come right out of the budget. Then we look at after school buses. So there's a 3:15 bus from the high school, a 4 o'clock bus from the high school and middle school. Down here in yellow, we have a 5 o'clock bus. We could remove all of the busing after school, and we're not obligated to transport after school hours. We are required to transport during school hours to and from school, but not for after school. Then this is where it gets really difficult. We have junior varsity sports, middle school sports. Then we have at Pulaski, we have a dedicated science teacher that each of the classroom teachers bring the students into a dedicated science lab. So that position could be removed, and that teacher she's currently a teacher on special assignment, would go back to her science tenure area. Library teacher at Pulaski. This currently, students at Pulaski get 6 specials a week. So in the course of 5 days in a week, we could reduce one of those specials and still meet the contractual obligations for our teachers that they get a prep every day. We recognize library is valuable for all students. They learn an awful lot in library. It's not just about picking out books. It's about using technology and media and learning about all different things. The librarians do a phenomenal job. So what this would do, we would have to access the least senior librarian in the district and move some librarians around to accomplish that, that excess. Then we can look at art at the high school and reduce 0.4, which is generally 2 sections a day of art. We could reduce technology at the high school by 2 sections a day. There's an administrative personnel change that we're anticipating that would result in a bit of a savings. The auto mechanic, custodian, and clerical at the high school are all positions that are currently vacant because the people either resigned or retired. So we would look to not replace them and use that as savings. Then we have a clerical at district office. That would be a potential excess position. Computer technology support, Mr. Hines's department, we contract out for some of the support. It's a big school district with a lot of technology needs. We would look to use that savings and look at other options to try to still maintain the technology that's needed in the district. I mentioned the 5 o'clock bus already. And then clubs and musical performances would reduce the budget by $296,553 and varsity sports by $466,059. So you could see in yellow, that section of clubs and musical performances and varsity sports, along with the 5 o'clock bus, that alone is $817,320. Right now, in this budget proposal that you see on the screen, all of those cuts combined would bring us to the contingent budget amount. So now it's up to the Board of Education to decide if those are the items that you'd like to keep as reductions. Just some information. The newest staff member in a tenure area or civil service classification that's eliminated, they're accessed and placed on a preferred eligibility list. For civil service, that's a 4-year list. And for teaching staff, it's a 7-year list. So if someone is accessed, they would be entitled to unemployment benefits. So that would be an increased charge to the district that would increase the contingent budget. So we would have to make adjustments for that as well. Those individuals would remain on their preferred eligibility list, 4 years if civil service, 7 if it's teacher. And as a new position should open up in the future for that amount of years, based on order of recall, basically whoever is the most senior that was recalled would have the opportunity to come back into a position that should become available in the future. Those individuals would also have the opportunity to decline during their recall period and still remain on a recall list. So up to 7 years for teachers, they could still continue to be contacted if a position should open. Some of the other options that could happen if we have other positions in the district that's in a different tenure area, but the individual that's excess has certification, holds certification in that different area, we can offer those individuals, that particular position if they're certified for it. And again, that person would have the option to accept it or reject it. Either way, they would remain on the preferred eligibility list for their tenure area. So other information that we want to make sure that you understand is that when we talk about clubs and activities, we did keep the following clubs in the budget because we felt it was important for our seniors and juniors to have as many options that we could possibly afford. So we would be looking to keep the high school yearbook in play, National Honor Society, student government or student council, the senior class advisor and the junior class advisor, because we really hope that by the time springtime comes, these students are able to enjoy their senior activities and their prom. It's been heartbreaking for the seniors that just graduated not having those opportunities. So if the pandemic should lessen, go away by then, we want to be able to provide our students with what they deserve to have as a senior. Music would still be taught during the school day, but clubs and activities include stipends for after school and evening concerts and performances. So we wouldn't be able to pay those stipends under the situation if we were to cut all clubs and activities. So then there are alternatives. So what I'd like to share with you are some other alternatives, but keep in mind that, again, none of them are good choices. Some of them are going to result in larger class sizes, additional reduced course offerings, and additional employee layoffs. So here we could eliminate 3 elementary sections, one at Phillips, one at Aquabog, and one at Riley. It would result in class sizes on the average in those buildings on those grades between 17 and 19, going to between 22 and 24 students to a class. Again, we worked hard to try to get class sizes lower, but they would still be within the contractual limit if they resulted in an average class size of 22 or 24. That amount is not that great because we do have a few unfilled positions in special education right now. That some of the 3 sections, we go to our tenure list in elementary education and we start at the least senior people to access them. And then if we have positions elsewhere in the district of which they're certified for, and we believe we do have that situation here, we would offer those people the other positions in a tenure area, in a new tenure area for them. And they would start earning tenure, accruing tenure in that new area while they would hold the number of years they have in their elementary tenure area, and then always have the option as a new position in elementary opens, they would be offered that position back again. Then we have a business teacher that last year is our first year that we brought business back. We had a 1.0 business teacher. We could reduce that teacher to a 0.6 and eliminate some of our business offerings. We don't have that many because she's only one person, but that would accrue a $30,000 savings. We have a literacy coach at Roanoke who's a teacher on special assignment from elementary tenure area. We would be able, if that's the wishes of the board, we can move her back into a classroom position. Again, we do have some elementary vacancies due to retirements that occurred June or July. So we do have movement places to put people so that they don't necessarily have to get accessed. We currently have 2 guards at each of the K4 buildings. So there's an option here to reduce one of the guards at each of the K4 buildings, leaving each school with 1. Again, we know that that's not ideal. We worked hard to establish safety protocols and increase security at our buildings. Also, with the hybrid approach for instruction, we do have needs to have staff members in the building to help with different supervision tasks throughout the day. So reducing security guards is definitely not ideal. Then we have math AIS at the elementary schools. The current budget already reduced. We had 7 in 2019, 2020, 7 math AIS providers. We reduced it in the original budget by 2, so that each building had 1 math AIS provider. This option reduces all of the math AIS providers. They are all elementary teachers because they're working under their elementary tenure area as a math AIS teacher. So they would go back to the classroom, and the next 5 least senior elementary teachers would be accessed, and we wouldn't have positions for those 5 people. Reading AIS at the elementary schools, we could reduce up to 9 reading teachers. That would leave 1 reading teacher at each of the buildings. Again, not ideal. That would be 9 reading teachers because they have a separate tenure area. But we know we have students with needs, remedial needs in both math and reading, and making these cuts would be devastating to the support that these students need in order to be successful. Then we have an option where we can look at upper level foreign language courses, which would give us a 1.6 FTE savings. That would be accessing from the foreign language tenure area. If students complete level 3 in a foreign language, typically in grade 10, that provides them with the full foreign language credit for a Regents Diploma or Advanced Regents Diploma. So we could eliminate our AP foreign language courses and our college level foreign language courses, and that would result in $116,000, 648 savings. Then we have music lessons at Pulaski. So our students start learning a musical instrument, either string or wind instrument, in 5th grade. And we could eliminate that and have students start musical instruments in 7th grade. And that would be a savings of 2 full-time music teachers. And then in each of our 17 kindergarten classrooms, each kindergarten teacher has a teaching assistant working with them. It's a full-time position. Typically we have up to 24, 25 kindergarten students in a classroom. That extra teaching assistant in the classroom is not extra. That person is definitely needed to help meet the needs and demands of the students. If we looked to having 1 teaching assistant shared between 2 kindergarten classrooms, we could access 8 full-time teaching assistants, which would result in a $268,199 savings. So that's the ugly situation that we're in right now. So please ask me questions. Let's discuss this. And you know, you don't have to make a decision tonight. I recommend that you talk it through and we try to schedule another meeting for next Tuesday so that we can come to a better conclusion.
I just want to talk to Sam about some numbers when I was going through the budget for expenditures, and to take a look at the charter school numbers and whether we can get some money there, because now we have some final numbers for registration. So you budgeted $8,793,735. Last year was 300. I think this past year we had 388 students that went there. So now that we know our numbers, can we look to some funds there?
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. I mean, we're currently looking at 435 students going to the charter school in this coming school year. The numbers are not finalized by any means, though, Ms. Healy, because parents can elect to enroll their students at the charter school at any time during the school year. And then we're obviously on the hook for the tuition, be it in a prorated fashion. I think the board can comfortably save, look to move $250,000 out of the charter school line. But anything more than that, I would be nervous about additional charter school enrollment that could cause us in a budget deficit, put us in a budget deficit problem.
Okay, so that's something that we could look to even over the next month or two as we firm up numbers too.
Sure.
So you feel comfortable with that?
I wouldn't go any higher than 250,000, but I can live with that, yes.
Anyone else?
Sam, do you have any budget unknowns at this time? Any savings that?
Not, there are a couple of unknowns still. The biggest area that is, of concern to me is what the full cost of implementing remote instruction will be, given bringing students back in certain waves, as the interim superintendent has outlined in the reentry plan. I think that there are, some areas where we don't know and won't know until we get further along. I've said this every year, so it shouldn't come as any surprise. The biggest unknown in any budget is the cost of health insurance for employees beginning in January. The health insurance system that we use changes its rates each January. We don't find out what those new rates are going to be until end of November, early December. And so that is the biggest budget unknown at the moment. Now, if we get into November, December, and we discover that we can recoup some savings in the health insurance line, I certainly will communicate that, to the board through the superintendent. But we're not going to know that until approximately Thanksgiving.
Okay, thank you. I do have a couple of questions, comments. So certainly none of this is easy, and it's hard as a board member to look at the position that we're in right now, and it's especially hard as a parent in the community to accept the fact that we are where we are today. So, my intention is certainly not to access anyone or anything that affects our students, because we're all here because of them. And I think that we always have to keep that in the forefront. And I know that we all do. That is all our goal, even though we may speak it differently, show it differently, present it differently. Our goal is our students. And so with that, I just am curious if someone could just identify, I know you had said that there were administrative raises or salaries that were not increased. If you could just identify those specifically.
The non-contracted salaries are the district office administration, anyone who's on an independent contract. So individual contracts are the district office administrators, myself, Sam, Mr. Dorkowski, Dr. Kerner, as well as confidential secretaries, Mr. Hines, Mr. Amato, our transportation directors, our food services director.
Director of Buildings and Grounds.
Director of Buildings and Grounds.
Okay.
It's 4 central administrators, 6 middle managers, and 8 confidential clerical employees. They get no raises under the rules of the contingent budget.
Okay, thank you. Also, if you could identify the administration in terms of the director positions and specifically their salaries and what it would cost to access or even reposition some of those. This is very hard for me to ask, and it's sensitive, obviously, but I'm just very curious to see that versus eliminating programs and miscellaneous.
Yeah, I can read the title and the salary, Mr. Ranieri, that I'm allowed to do that, the title and the salary, not the person's name. Just bear in mind that there are 7 directors here. We did have more than that, and we have made reductions. And it's important, these programs are overseen by directors, yeah. And it makes it very difficult to run the operations of the district without directors. Right, currently in district office, we have 1 less district office administrator, and I'll run through the positions with the salaries. So our ELA director makes $152,009. Our guidance director makes.
Is that both?
I'm sorry?
Is that both directors?
ELA.
Oh, ELA. I'm sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
Director of guidance, $174,425. Director of PPS, 149,433. Director of Fine Arts, 140,170. Director of ENL K4, 170,005. Director of ENL 512, 144,503. And Director of Athletics, Physical Education and Health, 154,054. Their responsibilities, besides supervising their areas, are also, we're required by New York State law to conduct annual evaluations of our teaching staff. Untenured teachers get 3 evaluations a year. 2 of them are announced, which are by the building administration, so the principal or assistant principal, and one is by our, one is unannounced, and that's by our directors. And then all of our tenured staff gets 1 announced and 1 unannounced. So those 7 people, plus Dr. Kerner and myself, are responsible for doing 450 evaluations during the course of the year, on top of managing programs, overseeing departments, running meetings, and getting into classrooms to monitor instruction and provide support.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Is it typical to have 2 E&L directors for our size program? I know Bayshore has 1.
This was put into play right before I started in the district. The district had experienced a large increase in a short amount of time of English language learners. And there was some citations made by the New York State Education Department, as well as through the Equity Department of New York State, that there were concerns with how the program was being run and the services being provided to students. And the district at the time felt that a second E&L director would assist with keeping us in compliance with the needs of our English language learners.
And your previous presentation, though, and I guess my other Board of Ed member brought up, I mean, are we, I guess he's questioning, are we, now we have 2 E&L directors, are we seeing any movement then? So.
My perception on what I presented and Mr. Doerr's perception were a little bit different. I do feel that we've added a lot of new programs in the past few years that are meeting the needs of the students, or better meeting the needs of the students. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to administer the exit exam for proficiency this year based on the pandemic. So we don't know, we don't have results to see if our number of students exiting increased based on the changes in program, but any new program takes a few years to be in existence before you can see the fruits of the labor.
Christine, could I just ask something for clarification? So you were saying that part of the responsibility of the directors is observation. Can you explain the difference between the building administration observation and the directors, and how or why in this time we can't have the building administration do the finalize the observation? And
the New York State law requires that the unannounced observation be done by an employee who has a different beds code from the teachers in the building. So building principals, assistant principals, and teachers in a particular building are all assigned the same beds code for that particular building.
okay.
Directors are K-12, they're district-wide directors. They're not assigned to any particular building. So their beds code ends in 4 zeros, which indicates a district-wide person. The APPR laws require that the unannounced observations be completed by someone with a district beds code. And the announced are only allowed to be done by the principal or assistant principal. It's very clear in the law. Mr. Ranieri, I don't know if you want to jump in on that.
Well, is that what you're asking, to clarify the difference between unannounced and announced in the
Yes.
required for, is that what you're asking of Mike?
I mean, is there anything you want to add to that? Or?
No, I think you stated exactly what the legal requirements are there in terms of who can perform what evaluations and the fact that those evaluations need to be, as you said, done by somebody outside that building.
Right, but I'm asking the difference between unannounced and announced.
Okay. Yep. An announced requires a pre-observation, then the observation, and a post-observation. So there's a meeting before and after the observation itself. An unannounced doesn't require the pre, because then it wouldn't be unannounced.
Right.
So it's an observation and a post-meeting.
Is it possible for these observations to be done by somebody from outside the district or a consultant?
Yes, if only the unannounced, because again, the beds code position, but we would have to seek out consultants to assist with that. It would, I don't know what the going rate is for a consultant, but I'm sure it's a few $100s per observation, because you go in, you actually do the physical observation in the classroom, then you meet with the teacher, and then you have to write up the evaluation. So there'd be a cost involved for each one.
Is a consultant, do you know if it's like a one big fee or if it goes by the hour?
I think it goes by the number of observations you do. That's what I've heard in the past and in other districts. I don't even know how many consultants are available. I would need to contact BOCES to see if they have a list of people that are willing to do that work.
Part of my questioning is really just to get a sense of, and I know you discussed it in terms of the announced and unannounced, but the difference between, like, what does the observation state from the director that it wouldn't state from the principal or the administrator of the building?
A different person's perspective.
Is it just like a checklist? Is there a written summary?
It's a checklist with written summary. It's based on a 4-point rubric: highly effective, effective, developing, ineffective. So there's numerous, I would say might be 20 different categories that the evaluator needs to go through to decide where the observation fell. And then there's sections for recommendations, commendations, suggestions for improvement, and then the conversation with the teacher.
Okay. And then, I'm sorry, you said something about bed codes?
Beds code. Every school and every district has a beds code. I don't know how many digits it is, but and it helps the state identify the school and the district. If you go on the school report card, you'll see it on the school report card. The beds code is written there.
Okay. And are there any administrators that have both that you're talking about? Because you're saying that the directors are essential to this process because of this bed code, and I'm just curious if there's any admins that have both that could eliminate.
Now, the state law requires that principals and assistant principals do the announced observations.
Okay.
And that a different individual who is not only assigned to that same building has to do the unannounced. So
would it be possible for, say, the principal at Riley to go to?
Yes,
that's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you. That's what I'm trying to get at.
The principal for the middle school goes up to the high school, or Pulaski, because they're all trained on the same type of observations.
Yes, you're right on that, but keep in mind that you're taking them out of their buildings, and there's needs beyond observations that happen at the building level. Just like for the directors, there's needs beyond observations that happen for directors. So, and we don't currently have a STEM director. Dr. Kerner and I were going to split those duties. And now in the interim spot that I'm in, I'm still doing assistant superintendent duties, it's going to be difficult for me to do STEM director duties as well.
Yeah.
And I'll do as many observations as I can, as I've done as assistant superintendent. I'll continue to do what I can, but at some point, we're definitely running with less administrators than we ever did before.
Yeah, at this point though, I would rather make it inconvenient for a building principal or something like that to have to go to another building than make it inconvenient for one of our students that are counting on a music performance or a blue mask performance or even an athletic performance that inconvenience the students.
I agree with you, Mr. Dorr, that this is not an easy situation that we're in. I don't want to eliminate any programs for any students. That is not my intention. That's not what I signed up for when I became an educator. But as the current interim superintendent, I also have to look at the efficiency of the operation. And I'm concerned with less administrators, how are we going to meet the mandates that are required by the state education department? How are we going to oversee all the programs that we have running? We want a good education in the classroom, and these directors carry out a lot of that, those programs, especially with one less district administrator right now.
Well, we all know that we don't have to make a decision tonight. That we all know. And we all know that all of us are really struggling with this.
Yes.
And that we also are trying to find a way to keep certain things. So we still have a lot to think about, and we have a lot to shuffle around. We definitely need another meeting for sure.
We do, but you know, maybe we obviously, Virginia brought up the charter school, so we can look at that. You know, certainly, well, the uncertainty of our not sports program, but the guidelines because of COVID, we don't even know if we're having a sports season. So we could look at eliminating, you know, the 5 o'clock bus if that's a savings. Certainly to save, you know, the music and the athletics at our school. I think it's a really important part of Riverhead. You know, we can look at some of the other
line. Therese, the bottom line is this entire board are people that even if we weren't sitting on the board, we'd still be looking out for sports and music. Because that's the way this board is. We're just like everyone else that sits on the outside. And I think that's our goal, to try to keep these things somehow, some way. But to take away certain things, it's so hard. You know, what do you take away? We need our teachers, we need our administrators. We know we're all struggling with it. I mean, I'm sick over this. I'm totally sick over this.
I just know personally that if we're going to be looking at any cuts, I think that, you know, Christine had brought up positions where there's vacancies, that this way, whatever educator has, you can explain that again, Christine, that there's certain ones that they'll be able to get into another position. I mean, because that's what, you know, I would like to see, that we're not.
If we could move people around, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We have what I think is 5 elementary positions right now between elementary and special education that we are able to access and possibly offer them a position in a different tenure area that they're certified for. So the majority of those that would be excess from elementary could be offered another position in a different tenure area that they could decide to accept and then still maintain their preferred eligibility rights in the original tenure area and possibly be recalled at some point in the next 7 years. You know, it's difficult. It's a very difficult situation.
Is that something that we can just do, or do we have to go through the union with them about that?
Well, we would meet with the union and review the tenure list so that we would discuss with our attorneys to make sure, because this is very important that we do this correctly. There's a lot of laws and based on tenure and other certifications that some people have might allow them to be accessed and automatically recalled because the person next in the seniority list may not have the additional certification that's needed for that particular classroom. There's a lot of intricacies, and we want to make sure that we do it correctly. So we work closely with the RCFA as well as our attorney to maintain the rights of our staff members.
Thank you. Any more questions, guys?
We're also, we have an option of reallocating some of our administrators within the Administrators Association so that we could better improve the operation of the district in this year. So that's definitely something that we can discuss further. It wouldn't result in any additional savings of administrators, but it would allow us to better fill the gaps that we currently have in our administrative staff to improve the operation of the district for the support for the teachers and students.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead, Sue.
Just about, you know, we're all here, we all want our children to have a well-rounded education in terms of, you know, also offering clubs and the arts and music and athletics. So I'm just trying to think a little bit about how can we offer all those options and in the time that we're in right now. So just hear me out. For, you know, performances, I'm just thinking reality, in the time that we are in right now, I don't see any live performances happening in terms of art or music, even with athletics, with competitions in between district to district. So with that in mind, how much would it cost the district in offering athletics as a club, like a club setting, in the sense that the club, let's say just a football club or basketball club, where they meet amongst themselves to do skill and drill and then record their performances for their student portfolio. It's just a thought. And I was wondering, how much would that cost the district to run a sport as a club?
I think we'd have to go back to the RCFA and discuss what that would look like, because currently in their contract, that type of position doesn't exist. The coaching positions exist and club advisors exist, but there's nothing in their contract that has a sport club position. So that would be something we would have to go to the RCFA and have a conversation on.
Just because if we're not going to competitions, whether it's music or art or, you know, the robotics club or even athletics, maybe there's, you know, just for this year, because of the situation that we're in and we'd like to offer all these programs, maybe there's a way of rethinking coming. I'm just trying to think out of the box a little differently.
Or delaying, keeping things out of the budget and waiting to see if there's any additional savings, like less charter school students enroll, or I know we're due for a health insurance increase. Maybe that will be less than what we anticipate. If there's any savings contained in the contingent budget from that, if we delay reinstating things and then say, well, if these things come to fruition where we are able to get some additional savings in the budget come January, because for sports, if the season doesn't start on September 21st, that's right now what the start date is for fall. If it doesn't happen there, they've said that they're going to push it to a January start date and do 3 10-week seasons and move the fall season in between winter and spring. Would we have some money in savings where we could reinstate at least varsity level at that point? I don't know, Mr. Schneider, you have any thoughts on that?
I think definitely adopting a wait and see approach is the smart move here, not only in terms of where we are financially, but that, there's 2 important factors to also keep in mind is where we're going to be with the pandemic and where we're going to be with the governor's state aid reduction. It might be also helpful if we back up to this slide here that Ms. Tony is showing now. As we move towards, if we're going to have a special meeting, if the board has any thoughts on these recommended budget reductions, so that as we're trying to cobble together a final package here, we know where you stand in terms of some of these items.
The items in green, are those things that we can consider moving forward with as reductions?
Well, I was trying to create a list a few minutes ago, and I thought that it was said that we would discuss it further and have another meeting. But before we get into the reductions, Sam, I know that you've probably answered this, not just to me, but to many a few times. So please excuse my forgetfulness, but are we any closer to knowing what savings we may have from, March to now, since the school hasn't been operating at its full capacity, or anything you can talk about regarding savings from COVID?
You're going to have money that went in, that the board authorized to go into reserves, that is going to be used as a revenue source in the 2021 school year to offset reductions in the state aid. So I'll give an example. In a normal year, we would spend maybe about $100,000 out of the employee retirement system reserve that the board has set up in order to offset costs to the employee retirement system. The board authorized a much larger infusion of money left over from the 1920 budget into that reserve. We are inevitably going to get a cut in state aid. So rather than have to reduce additional programs, you're going to be able to use the money in those reserves to do it. Now, the audit is going to be done, I'm going to say, in approximately 3 weeks. I'm reluctant to say any number publicly until then, because I don't want to say a number and have the board and the public get attached to that number and then have the auditor change it. But I will say that whatever was left over when the 1920 budget was closed, the board authorized to go into various reserves. And then come October, when the board sets the tax levy for the 2021 school year and traditionally authorizes use of those reserves, the board will then be saying, okay, we're going to, we expected approximately $32.5 million in state aid, but we're getting, and I'm going to make this number up just as an example, 31 million or 30 million in state aid. So we're going to cure that deficit by appropriating additional money out of the reserves as a revenue source, so to speak, in order to make up that difference.
Sam, can you speak to the 20%, the news item that came out that we were going to get a 20% cut in state aid? Can you give a dollar amount so that people can understand what we're anticipating next year in cuts?
Well, we get approximately $32 million in state aid. So, we're talking about $6 million. Whether that 20% reduction applies to the entire package of state aid or just the foundation aid portion, I have not seen any definitive information on that. So to simplify a rather complicated system, in general, state aid comes in 2 forms. Either it comes in the form of a formula based on the district's financial position and poverty level, et cetera, that the state measures, or it comes in the form of per pupil allocations. So foundation aid is in the first category, whereas textbook aid would be in the second category. So is the governor going to reduce both the formula calculations as well as the per pupil allocations? Well, then we're looking at close to $6 million in state aid reduction. Or is the governor going to leave the per pupil allocation alone and just reduce the formalized aids? We're looking at less of a reduction. I think we're not going to know for certain for a very long time because the state aid is dispersed over a series of months. And I think that the state needs to have a clearer picture of where it is financially to know what it can afford. So there could be an initial reduction, and then the governor could reserve the right to have a second reduction, or could reserve the right, if the economic situation improves, to infuse some money back into the system. I wish I had a firmer answer than that, but that's as much as we know right now.
I have 2 questions. One, going back to the observations, is it possible that we can apply, or is there such thing as a hardship waiver on the number of observations or who can make the observations?
They have had a hardship waiver in the past. Mr. Ranieri, is that still in existence?
You know what? I'd have to look. It hasn't really come up recently with many of our clients, but we could definitely take a look and see if it's still there.
Okay. And also, Mike, what are the rules for fundraising if parents wanted to come together and raise money to save some of these programs?
That's going to kind of depend on the program to a certain extent. Look, you can receive donations. You can, and donations can be earmarked and allocated for certain things. Generally speaking, in terms of saving sports, you're looking at saving a full season, not just an individual sport. In terms of the actual rules governing how they can fundraise, that's something that I would advise the school district not really to be a part of. If parent groups want to do fundraising on their own, they would be restricted in what, in whatever way that particular group is restricted. But other than that, I wouldn't have, there's nothing specific. I wouldn't have the school district get involved in those decisions, even in terms of method of fundraising and how they're doing it, or even putting the district's name on it. There could be a whole host of issues that come with it in terms of, for example, what happens if you raise money for sports and the sports seasons don't happen? Where does that money go? So those are some of the questions that those groups would have to answer in terms of doing that fundraising. But from the school district's end, again, sports, you're looking at full seasons at a time. And other than that, you can receive donations in ways that can be specified by the donor. And if there are any, again, like I said before, if there are any specific questions about can we do X, Y, and Z, we're happy to answer those for the board as they come up.
Okay. And lastly, I saw back when you went over the rules of the contingency budget that we can't have outside organizations use our facilities unless paid in full. So if there are sports, so like the town's PAL program or anything else that the town or outside organizations use our facilities, where they normally were getting them for free, would now be a charge?
Most likely, again, not knowing the specifics of the situation in terms of what the costs are to the district, you can't incur any costs for anyone else's use of your facilities.
And Mr. Dorr, to add to that, we're in the process of working out a schedule of use that we're going to ask the board to adopt. But, as Mr. Ranieri is saying, sometimes it's a little hard to come up with an exact number because we have to figure out both the wear and tear on the field and then whatever other personnel we may need in order to appropriately staff a location. So are we talking about security, custodial, et cetera, et cetera?
Okay.
So does the board want to meet again next Tuesday, the 11th?
yes, give us time to digest all of these numbers.
And then just let me know if there's any other information that you want me to have for Tuesday.
Okay, with that said, we're gonna move on.
Were we
Yeah.
going to, I'm sorry, were we going to, Sam had also brought up, talk about some things that we might be looking to eliminate, that he would be able to revise some numbers for next week, or are we just gonna come in next Tuesday with decisions? Like have the same conversation?
Do we need to make a decision next week?
No, what Sam had said a few minutes ago, was there anything that the board was particularly looking at to eliminate so that he could
to get us closer to the number?
budget, get a closer guesstimate to the number that we might come up with next week? So were there any particular items, departments, programs that we were pretty sure like the 5 o'clock bus? My recommendation, just because we don't know if we're even going to need it, maybe that could be one of the things that we look to eliminate. I think, what did you say? It was like almost $55,000. I know it's, pocket change in comparison to the rest of the total budget, but it's a start. And what would we need the 5 o'clock bus for if we don't have programs?
I'd like to keep at least the clubs and music performance for at least the high school, and also at least varsity sports.
Okay, so do you think we need the 5 o'clock bus for that?
I don't think so. I think we can get away without having the 5 o'clock bus.
Yeah.
I agree with the 5 o'clock bus. I would also like to keep in the high school music and sports program if we can.
Absolutely.
I'd like to, especially the clubs and music performances, and I think the money that we are seeing, because the charter numbers, that from what I'm seeing, that would cover that, at least the club and music performance part. We could earmark some of that money for that.
This is here, the clubs and music performance for high school?
Yes.
So
I think so. Is that going to be clubs and music performances? I guess you were including middle school number.
That number included all clubs and musical activities K-12.
Okay, so then if you could kind of let us know what it would cost to run for the high school.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And based on this information, we probably should prepare some resolutions to add to the agenda when we're in public, based on decisions, so that we can move forward with the accessing process. I'm not sure how far we can get with that for that meeting. What do you think, Mr. Ranieri? Is that something we can do in process, or?
I think that's something we should probably discuss offline. There are going to be legal questions involved there that are not appropriate to be discussed in public.
Okay.
was there anything else on the chart that Christine put up that any of the board members have a
That's what I was just going to ask.
thought about?
Sue and Brian have any ideas?
I would like to know how many students go on to the advanced foreign language beyond the level 3 that go on to level 4 in AP.
We have those numbers.
Is there anything in particular, Sue, you're looking into?
Not really. I would like to know the number of how much it would cost if we did the clubs, arts, and athletics without the cost for competition.
Thank you.
Yeah, but let me pull it back up. So this was the original list.
Can we go back to Sue? What? I still don't understand what you mean with competition, but they would practice and not play?
Yeah, I'm saying in order to, I'm just trying to think. That's why I was using that terminology. Like you run a sport like a club in the sense that the students will get the skill, the drill, and, you know, play against our own students, but we won't have off-campus games.
How does that help a student that may be going for an athletic scholarship?
Well, this is just it. I mean, and even in this time, I honestly don't see athletes traveling to compete.
I don't believe we're going to have it in September, but I believe after the first of the year, I think we're going to end up with the modified schedules.
Mr. Schneider, when will we get the numbers for health insurance increases?
Approximately Thanksgiving.
Christine, can you please put up the other reduction? I think that one was a little less scary. Okay.
This one was less scary?
Neither, actually, but I don't. Maybe it has less lines. Okay. So, I mean,
it would be helpful if there were some decisions that we could make today, because then it would really help us fine tune for next week where we are. And then if we made some decisions today, we could begin the process with letting staff know if they're affected.
Okay, so, you know, again, we're all brainstorming. So the vacant position at Roanoke.
I agree with that.
So the literacy coach, putting the literacy coach into the classroom.
The literacy coach, it's a vacant position, so.
No, the literacy coach exists.
Oh, I'm reading.
She would be replacing a vacant position that was required, that
Have a job.
vacated by a retirement.
So she's going to be moving.
She would no longer be the literacy coach. She would be a classroom teacher.
Okay.
Okay, so
and that would be a $72,000 savings.
Almost.
Yeah, that's what you have on the chart, 72,905.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I think the second guards at the elementary schools, I know it's not a popular decision, but it's a lot of money.
I was just going to say the same thing,
Yeah.
Chris. You can go with that.
You know, I know we want to reiterate, you know, security at our schools is essential, but it's $161,000, almost $162,000 to have the second guard. And if kids aren't in school, you know, the amount of students that we have, I mean, I'm just trying to rationalize it. I really, I'm just talking out loud. And again, I want to say this is not easy.
Those three elementary section.
Did you consider, so what is the total now, Sam?
Well, you learn in business administrator school not to do math in public, so give me a few minutes.
And again, if there's only a handful of students that are taking the upper level foreign language classes, that again is a big chunk of change.
I could provide those numbers in the update tomorrow,
Okay.
and then we could talk about it on Tuesday.
Okay, and I wish we had both on one screen. Is there any way to do that?
I don't know, I can get the presentation a little before. I could flip back and forth.
Wait, I think on my notes, I had the three, the green one that you just had. The 3 elementary positions I had on my notes. I had the 5 o'clock, 3 elementary, the charter school savings, and literacy. But if you can go
3
back,
elementary, I could agree with the 3 elementary.
yeah.
Yeah, the 3 elementary, because you said that there were positions of special.
Right. They would be redirected,
Yes.
right? Okay.
And the library teacher at Pulaski, is there any way to?
I think we have to be careful not to target Pulaski. Because it didn't, did you mention, so that would be the library, tech, and something else?
Tech is not at Pulaski, tech is at the high school.
Oh, so
Electives at the high school. If the library teacher from Pulaski was eliminated that position, it would result in excess in a different place. But the students would get 1 prep a day, 1 special a day. The teachers would get 1 prep a day, as opposed to an extra special floating over the course of a week.
Okay. I'm seeing like so many things.
How about
taking out the guards? Can we at least keep
the guards
teacher at Pulaski, the library teacher at Pulaski? I don't know if he's running numbers here, because I know that also he's taking out, he's going to rerun the clubs and music. It's going to be less than 296,000.
Right.
So
maybe with those numbers, Sam, we could wait to remove library. I don't know.
So if I'm hearing what the board is saying as a guide to just kind of summarize it, the board is looking to make sure that varsity sports definitely stays, that clubs and music performance, particularly at the high school level, is preserved. And I'm sorry?
Correct.
Okay. And there seems to be some board members who are interested in preserving the library position at Pulaski.
I think it's important.
Okay. If you do that, it's approximately, and I want to emphasize approximately, $675,000 that you have to come up with in other cuts. Now, if you eliminate the 5 o'clock bus, you recoup some savings from the charter school tuition that we talked about. And then if you can just advance the next slide, please.
You want the other chart?
Yeah, the other chart, sorry. You throw in the elementary sections that are listed there, the literacy coach, before you even, and the guards, which I think, we can look at. Whatever is not already saved, the board does have the option of dipping into the 4% fund balance, which is not, I want to emphasize, not a good long-term financial plan. But in a 1-year emergency situation, that's why it's there. So, you may want to consider that as an option. So maybe what would be smart is if you give Ms. Tone and I a day or two to just work on these numbers a little bit and come back on Tuesday with your direction in mind. But Christine, if you just go back to the other chart, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I had a question on this chart as well, because there's some positions in here, the vacant positions. You're good with keeping them vacant?
Hold on.
Auto mechanic, custodian, clerical at the high school.
Right, that was going to be my point, was that if the board is in general, with the exception of the library teacher, comfortable with everything listed in the greenish here.
Well, what about, wait, we were, hold on, no. The district office, clerical?
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. I'm going back and forth on these charts. So we've discussed 5 o'clock bus, 3 elementary positions, charter school, reserve, literacy, upper level, language, security, and this clerical district office position.
Right.
What about doing the custodian?
I mean, look, you need to, I think you need to, if you look at just the green section, okay? Just the green section here,
Yeah.
In general, what I'm hearing from the board is that the board is supportive of all of these cuts in the green section, except for the library at Pulaski. Do we hear you correctly on that?
I would rather keep the science teacher than the library teacher. I think
I'm sorry, Chris.
the science is more needed.
What about 5th and 6th grade reading? I mean, I think that might.
Library is different from reading instruction.
But I mean,
I don't mean reading instruction.
Science teacher has the
Well,
position
could we look at keeping both and see what happens there? Keep
Look to keep the science teacher and the library teacher.
keep that and see where our numbers fall.
Okay, just keep in mind, everything that you take out of the green in this chart, you're digging the hole deeper.
I know.
What has to come from the other chart. So I want you to just keep that in mind as you make that. We can, I can prepare a couple of scenarios for you, but if you flip ahead to the other chart, I just want to point out the other chart has some pretty serious, reductions in program that, as you take things out of the chart that's currently on the screen and say, no, we want to preserve those, we have to hit the items on the other chart more and more heavily. So I'll prepare a couple of scenarios for you to see whether, how you like the end result.
Okay. So, with the obviously goal of keeping the library teacher, potentially keeping the science teacher, and then everything else, in my opinion, what I'm looking at, I think looks fine.
And could I have more, am I allowed to have more information about what's being cut in art and technology, just for my own,
I could bring that with me on Tuesday. Or I could put in the update tomorrow. I think I had it in last week's update as to some of the considerations.
Right, because I know you had another option for technology where it was half that amount.
I just want to let you guys know my battery is almost gone.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
And Sue had to leave the meeting.
I just want to speak on the security guards. As far as we're going into the unknown, this would be the first time where any kids are back in some type of building with everything that's going on. To take away that from there, we don't know what's going on. We don't even know if we have to take temperatures, who's going to be doing that, who's checking IDs. I know we have a lot of students that get picked up by people that aren't the parents that they don't know who they are. I think even though the kids aren't going there every day, their workload is going to increase because you're going to have kids that are going to show up on a day they're not supposed to be there. But no, I want my kids here this day. There's a lot of unknowns when it comes down to when we actually start putting kids in buildings, teachers in buildings, parents showing up to those buildings.
I didn't even think of that, Brian.
Wearing masks, who's going to enforce that? Hand washing, everything from, hand sanitizer stations. I mean, I deal with it now. I see it. And I'm not even going to get into the other arrests that's happened over the last couple of months. Especially, I don't want to see that cut for those reasons. I mean, if we have to do that down the line, okay. But now, we're going into the unknown. We may have to move some of those security guards to the high school because of tensions and because of different problems. So it's a huge unknown. And I see it now. I see it every day that I go to work. And to cut that just because, it's less kids, they fulfill an important function, especially at the elementary. Since we went to 2 at the elementary, it's been highly effective. I've seen it firsthand. Who's going to fill in those roles? So you're going to have one security doing registration because, okay, you're here today, you're here today, you're here today. Oh, wait, you're not supposed to be there. But somebody can't get daycare, so they're just going to bring their kid to the school. Who's going to do that? If a teacher sit there, Are we going to put that strictly on the principal?
Well, I
That's
fully,
another avenue. I mean, maybe we individualize, look at each club. Maybe we look at each varsity sport. Maybe we put a survey out there to the parents and students. I mean, I don't want to say any different sport because I don't want to be labeled as I don't like a certain sport. I'm all for keeping all of it. But maybe there's only one kid interested in playing a certain sport, or they don't want to. Or
you have to fund the whole.
Especially if we're going to move it back. You're going to move back fall sports into the winter. Where are they going to play? I mean, it's a haphazard way that Steve's rolling all this out, and that's a total unknown. You're going to play football in a gym? You're going to play football in summer or in June? So,
No,
certain cuts.
And they're not going to put the full sports in the winter, right, Christine?
They're going to have winter sports in January for 10 weeks. I believe fall sports was supposed to start in March for 10 weeks, and spring sports will start in April for 10 weeks. So by March, spring sports is usually, they're outside anyway at that point. This is not our decision. This is from New York State Athletic Association.
But Brian, thanks for bringing up a lot of those points, because I think it makes us, think. So,
and as far as AIS and all that, and the TAs, they're needed. I mean, this is a district that needs.
It's needed, but then again, the music and the sports are needed for these children just as much. I mean, there are students out there, their whole college career is based on their performances. I mean, it's to take that away from them. It's tough.
I never said take all that away from them. I said, can I get a breakdown of what each varsity sport costs? And is there a way to put it out to the parents? I mean, I'm sure we can do it. Other districts have done it. Other districts have done surveys on busing, whether or not their kids are going to take the bus or not, and have had parents sign affidavits to say, I'm not using the bus. Granted, we have our own bus depot, we have our own transportation, but other districts have done that.
all right.
So if I mean, there has to be a happy medium. If you're going to, you take away AIS, all that, the kids are just fall further behind. And like my ninth grade year at eSport, we were on austerity. Okay. We had sports, and like Sue had mentioned, it was kind of like a club team. And if there's something that can be explored in that route and that's still getting kids, the bottom line is you want to get kids taped. You want to get these athletes taped. They want to be seen. You look at like major league sports right now, go by that. Those that are in the bubble, which we can't put kids in a bubble. Those that are in the bubble still have COVID cases. And a lot of the COVID cases are we're going to talk about the older coaches, referees. There's a whole lot involved with that. And we can't put the kids in a bubble. The sports like baseball almost was done. Still may be done. If they have another outbreak, that season's over. You have to take these into consideration. Nobody
take it into consideration that it won't start until at least January. And a lot of things are going to change by January.
We don't know that.
We don't know they're not, though. So we're going to live in fear that they aren't, or are we going to be positive that they are?
Whoa! Don't put words in my mouth. Nobody said living in fear, guy.
All right, guys, calm it down a little bit.
All right, everybody else had their chance to speak.
No,
I'm going to speak.
Go ahead, Brian.
No. I'm going to speak. Nobody said living in fear. But as somebody that can speak, like you spoke on your expertise earlier, Chris, I'm somebody who's on the front line and sees it every day. Okay? And the bottom line is we don't know what's going to happen. Not living in fear, I'd love to plan. I'd love to just go back to brick and mortar, every kid go back to school and say that right now, vote on that and be done and do that. But unfortunately, we can't. This is totally uncharted territory for everybody. And if we lose out on some sports, we keep education. Our job is to educate the kids. That is the job of us, is to educate the kids. Bottom line. I never once said I want to get rid of sports. I want to keep everything, but we can't. And that, honestly, that kills me. But to take away security guards, just AIS, TAs, and TAs in kindergarten when they're first there, that's the best time to start with them. Let's take away from the younger kids. No.
You know, Brian, just to interject, I think we're all in consensus that didn't even come up, that we wanted to even take away AIS or the TAs or anything from that other list that Christine presented, right? I mean, can we say that? I mean, like I think we all kind of looked at that and we're just, you know, like that'd be the last place I would even look to taking, you know, math or reading AIS or, you know, music lessons or any TA at all, like that on that end. Even the, you know, the foreign language, I wouldn't like to see that cut at all. So I think we're just looking, and at this point, and I know hopefully next week Sam will come back with numbers, is to have a sense of hope, you know, because other school districts are going in to next year with, you know, full programs. So just some hope for some of those, you know, older kids in the high school. And like I said, we found, you know, money with the charter, and there might be a little bit more so that we're not, you know, cutting from anywhere. But, you know, I really appreciate Brian, all the stuff that you brought up, because
that stuff's still on this list, and we may bring it up next week to keep this. We can get rid of half of them. I don't want to see any of them. But that's I said my piece. That's important. That's important.
Brian, I understand what you're saying, and I do, you know, I have been inundated since the town turned their back on the students and didn't give the budget through of how we're going to save these programs for these kids. And it's been how we're going to save music and how we're going to save sport. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a single phone call or a single email or a text about saving a program. It's all been about saving the music and the sports. And that's what the community is concerned about.
If I can make a suggestion that Sam and I will rework the numbers based on the direction that we heard from you tonight, and we could still present additional options, but you've narrowed the scope down for us, so that will help. That will give us a better number of where we need to look at reductions, and that will definitely help for Tuesday. It'll bring us to a better starting point. We're closer. You've done great work. This was a good discussion. Great work.
It's been a great discussion. We really have to move on.
Okay.
Everyone's my computer. I just got it plugged in, but
Yeah.
okay. So we're going to go to new business. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
Have a second, please.
Second.
Any comments, cares, or concerns?
No.
Mr. Dorr?
Yes.
Dr. Kukunis had to leave. Mr. Wallace also had to leave. So Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski, Therese,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
and myself is yes. Motion passes. Award of a new contract. Could I have a motion?
Motion.
Could I have a second, please? Therese, wave the hand.
I
Any comments, cares, or concerns? Seeing
No.
nothing. Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Motion passes. Item C, no award of solicited contract. Motion,
Motion.
second.
Second.
Thank you. Any cares, comments, or concerns? Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Item D, approval of cooperative bids. Could I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you. Could I have a second?
Second,
Thank you. Mr. Dorr,
yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Item E, acceptance of re-entry plan. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Have a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, cares, or concerns?
Yes.
I,
Um,
Yes, Mr. Dorr.
I disagree with the reentry plan, especially on the K to 6 level, that at least even K to 4, those kids need to see their teacher every day, whether it's in person or by video, but they need to see their teachers. They can't be on seesaw and whatever. They need to be seeing their teacher. We need to figure out some way to make it possible that the teachers do a video lesson or something, so those young kids see their teacher.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr.
I'd also like to comment.
Go ahead.
You know, this is very challenging, and I know the efforts that went into this plan. I know the limitations that we have as a district in terms of the overcrowding and the space issue, but everyone's going to be affected by any decision that we make, and I am not in favor of that fragmented schedule either. I know there isn't a great solution, but I agree with Chris, with Mr. Dorr, that, you know, the kids, to have one group come in on Monday and Tuesday, and that's their only exposure to the building, their friends, the teacher, the classroom, the principal, everything that's incorporated into a child's experience. I know what I'm saying is not going to make people happy. Some people will be happy, you know, but I just don't agree with the K6 at all. So.
Well, what I have to say is, I know this was a very hard thing to do. I know that what we're doing is what a lot of the school districts that are overcrowded and like us are doing. I'm not happy with it. However, it is fluid. There's things that's going to be changed as we go along. It's going to be readjusted. It might change again before we even start the school year.
Right.
That's, you know, there's nothing, no matter what we do, is not going to make us totally 100% happy or the parents 100% happy. We have to educate them, and we have to find a way. I know Ms. Tona worked hard on this. She's had input from parents. She's had input from staff, and this is what she came up with.
Yeah.
So with that said,
One other thing, I do appreciate the work that you did put into this, because I know how hard it was, and I believe the man who negotiated the Germany reconsolidation is now a university president, and he's saying it was harder to put this plan together than to bring Germany back together.
Yeah.
So the work that you did was fantastic.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with the personal comment at all, Christine, or anyone that worked diligently, effortlessly, with all the changes that happen on a daily, probably minute to minute changes that you guys experience. I know, but I just, from a personal perspective, I just, even when, you know, you rolled it out to us, I just felt like that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday with the elementary. Just I don't see how it's going to work for parents, for the students. But I know we have to try. So
if I could just respond, that I agree with all of you 100%. This is not the way education is supposed to look. We wish that we could provide additional days for the students. There was a lot of discussion about this back and forth with members of the community and members of the committees and the people from the community. They, even though they were on our district task force and subcommittees, they were speaking to many people in the district and coming back and bringing different scenarios that if we had a different situation for our district, we would absolutely be looking at different scenarios. But, ultimately, this was the final plan that I needed to put forward and as required. But I do, again, want to reiterate how hard the people on the committees have been working in the summer when it's supposed to be their time to rest and recharge. And that luxury was not afforded to them this year and we still meet. We met today. We're going to continue to meet on Thursdays because we're still looking at other options. What else can we do to make this plan better? We've talked about coming back to the table after a month in and seeing if there are adjustments that can be made once we have more information. So we definitely want to put the best plan out there, but we recognize that nothing can take the place of full 5-day in-person instruction.
Efforts don't go unnoticed.
Thank you. Thank you. On behalf of everyone that worked with me, thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I appreciate the flexibility that you're giving our families for those that want to go to do full-time remote, because a lot of other districts, especially our size, are not doing that. And also the flexibility to, if they want to come back in, and you're being flexible also with helping them with the childcare, changing out the, cohorts, talking to the principal. So thank you for doing, because that was a concern for a lot of families, afraid to put their kids back into school and maybe didn't want to be doing the homeschooling. They could still be part of the school district's curriculum and working with our fine teachers and everything else. So thank you.
Ms. Downs, I just want to remind you that even though you had 2 board members leave, you still require 4 votes to pass a resolution.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, because on the reentry, we're still on the floor. Mr. Dorr?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Healy? I don't know why. I'm reading it. It's right here. I'm tired and hungry.
Yeah.
Did you take your vote?
I said yes.
Okay. Ms. Zahowski?
I can't. No.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
And myself is a yes. Passes. Next. Letter G, acceptance of results of special district meeting, July 28th. Can I have a motion?
You have to go to F first.
What's F? I thought I just did F.
Approval of changes to the calendar.
Oh, I'm sorry. F, approval of changes to the calendar. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Thank you, Therese. Any comments or Paul cares or anything? I think we're talked out. Mr. Dorr?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Healy?
Healy, yes.
Ms. Zahowski?
Yeah.
Mr. Conley?
Yes.
And myself is yes. It passes. Okay. G, acceptance of results of special district meeting. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, cares, or concerns? Mr. Dorr?
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski,
Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes.
myself is a yes. Motion passes. Acceptance of donation, yes.
I'm sorry. I have a note on my agenda. A comment for the result of the special district meeting. Could I just ask that communication from the community to the district office, which would include the superintendent and/or the deputy superintendent, copy the Board of Education? Thank you.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, acceptance of donation. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second. Any comments, cares, or concerns? Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
I gotta skip names here. Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Ms. Zahowski. Ms. Zahowski.
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Conley,
Yes, and thank you
and
very much.
myself is yes. I'd like to thank the New York State Association of School Business Officials. They're giving 2 scholarships, one for the class of 2021 and one for the class of 2022, each $500 out of in honor of Gregory M. Meyer, who was named 2020 Outstanding School Board Member of the Year. And also I would like to thank Suffolk County Department of Community Affairs. They are donating 10,000 cloth masks to our school district. Now, opportunity for board members.
Talking about masks, I just wanted to give a shout out to all the wonderful parents that are making the masks for students. Busy sewing and donating, cutting out patterns, and I'm just in awe of their efforts. And just as soon as they heard, they just stepped up. Every time you turn around, even with when the budget went down, and those that are setting up pages for fundraising, it's been an awesome community with much hope, so and a lot of hard work. So thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, so opportunity for RCFA. And here's where I become Mr. Gregory Wallace. Members of the board, I present this statement with a heavy heart as the realization begins to set in of what a failed budget means for our students, our school, and our community. Now you, the Board of Education, must carry out the will of the voters and slash programs which are I can't say it, I'm tongue-tied, that are meant for both our schools as well as the community in the midst of the global pandemic, with resources are already stretched to the max. The thought of empty fields, silent stages, the loss of vital enrichment, as well as academic programs for students weighs heavily on the parents of this community who still find themselves in disbelief of the situation we find ourselves in. The dedicated faculty and staff of this district will make the best of the cards we are dealt. We will pick up the pieces left behind in the aftermath of this demoralizing defeat, but it will not erase the feeling of sadness we all share for the children of this community who will now go without, as a result, Riverhead Central School District being placed on a contingency for the first time since the late 70s. Submitted with deepest regrets for the children of Riverhead, Gregory Wallace, RCFA President. Okay, what we're going to do now is...
Lori, you know what? I wanted to recognize one of our students in the board comment, and I just So if I could just recognize Andrew McCrae. He put together an incredible video that he shared on YouTube and in our community, just about why we play, and it incorporates music and sports and theater and every club and every activity that any of our students are involved in. And I just wanted to compliment his efforts and really encourage him to keep being a voice for his fellow classmates. Thank you, Andrew.
Yes, thank you. That was absolutely beautiful what you sent us. We have in the waiting room, we have a few people.
And we
that
also have written comments still. So we also have more written comments from the write-in survey for comments.
You want to do them first? Or do you want to have the live people first?
You want to do the live people first, and maybe maybe what they're going to ask will already be here?
Be the same ones, yeah. Okay. Sam, a gatekeeper.
Okay, I'm admitting the first person, and I believe Ms. Ryumi is keeping the time, correct? Okay. So the first person is Caden.
Hi, Caden. What's your question tonight? Oh.
Okay, they've hung up. The next person waiting is Loretta.
Who?
Loretta.
Hi, Loretta. What's your question for the board? You got to unmute yourself. Loretta, you're still muted.
Sam, do you have that capability to unmute her?
I'm trying, but it's not unmuting. So I'm going to put Loretta back in the waiting room, and we'll see if we can.
Everyone's got to remember, this is our first time doing this. There's going to be some little mix-ups here.
Okay, the next person is Marty.
Marty.
It says joining.
Oh, he's joining?
That's what it says, so. Okay, while we wait for that to join, I can admit the next person if you'd like.
Okay, go right ahead.
Okay, this says Mary Beth.
Hi, Mary Beth. Your question for the board?
It's still connecting, hold on.
This is a buzzkill.
In the meanwhile, would you like me to read some questions from the written comments?
Yeah.
Sure.
Sam, do you think it's their internet connection or?
I don't know. Let me put Mary Beth back in the waiting room, and I'll try another one.
Try another one.
Okay, this is Leah Petrignani.
Oh,
Leah?
there she is.
What's your question for the board?
So it says connecting. There it is.
Yeah, there she is.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Leah. I just want to say thank you to everyone for your efforts with the reopening. It's not an easy task.
Thank you.
I also want to thank Mr. Dorr for stressing how important it is for our younger children to see their teachers. My daughter is going to be in second grade at Aquabog. She struggled with remote learning immensely. And a big portion of why she struggled was she did not have daily contact with her teacher. She suffers from anxiety, like many of our children do, especially after this. And I just want to stress that I also feel as a parent, it is incredibly important for our children to have daily contact with their teacher. And I would hope that somehow it could be looked into to having like they're planning to do at the 7th to 12th grade level, of having the lessons be at least recorded.
Thank you. Do you have any, Ms. Tona?
We can, thank you for your question. We could definitely look into that. It's more challenging on the elementary level with the recording of the lessons with the students in front of them, but we're going to talk about other ways that we can provide some daily contact. We'll go back to the brainstorming table and
thank you. Yeah, just something they need. I mean, I'm a social worker and they need more than, that's my job, and they need more than what they were given in the spring and what it sounds like they're planning for the fall. Especially for parents that might opt for full remote. I mean, these kids need to have contact with their teachers.
We
And that's all.
agree. We
All right.
definitely agree.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you for all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Next.
The next person is using the name iPhone, so I'm not sure who.
iPhone.
Here you go.
Hi, iPhone. You have a question for the board?
Okay, I'll put iPhone back in the waiting room and we'll move on to the next person. This is Katie.
Hi, Katie. Do we know if it's our end or their end?
Well, we know it works because of the comment we heard a moment ago. So I'll put Katie back in the waiting room. And here is Isabella Vinay.
Hi, Isabella.
one of the quick questions here, Mr. Marr from Calverton, will there be another budget vote? No, there won't. 2 times. Another budget vote will happen in May of next year for the 2021-22 budget.
All right, let's try Virginia Scudder.
Hi, Virginia.
Hello?
There you are. You finally got through.
Hi. I'm actually Laura Huber, and I have a question regarding information.
It's the delay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ms. Huber, you're going to have to mute the computer you're listening to the meeting on, or you're going to get reverberation.
Now she's muted.
Sorry about that. My question is regarding with Riverhead Town. I know that there was the notice that was filed against them. I was wondering if you had heard anything from the town, or if the town supervisor has spoken to anyone regarding, repairing the relations after seeing, what she had said about, the article in Riverhead Local, if there was any communication with the town regarding the money that they owe the district, or has anything changed regarding that?
Mr. Ranieri?
I don't believe our office has had any conversations, and to the extent that we have, when we, or I should say, to the extent when we do, it may not even be appropriate to discuss in this forum. But if there's anything to report at any time, where we can legally do that without breaking privilege, we will do that.
Okay. Will they let it? Will we find out when the town has paid the money? Will the community be able to know that information?
That's a question for Mr. Schneider.
As soon as we are paid anything, I'll be happy to provide a report, but we have not been paid anything since the last time this was discussed.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, and just one more question. Does you have the percentage of parents in the district that were a percentage of athletes within the district of students that played sports?
I don't have that information at hand. I'd have to ask Mr. Sachs if he has that information, but we won't be able to get that for this meeting.
Okay, maybe for another meeting, just so we know back approximately how many, students are impacted by the different programs too. Just I think would be good for just for the community to see how many actual, they're children. They're not just, it's not just a number of dollars. It's actual kids that are, now being impacted by these programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next person is Janet Douglas.
Hi, Janet. You got to unmute yourself.
Given her the ability to unmute. I can put her back in the waiting room. We can come back to this if you like.
Put it back in.
Okay. Here's James Foster.
Hi, James. Hello, James. You have to unmute yourself, hon.
Hello.
Hi. What's your question?
All right. So I have two questions. I have one. Well, actually, I'm going to start off with this. The position that you guys have been put in with the budget failing is unfair, and I want to acknowledge that and start with that first of all. And I have two questions. The first question is, who actually put together the budget suggestions? It seems like it was independent of the complete board's input. Because what I was looking for really today was answers on what the future of the school district was going to look like today. Because every day that goes by counts. I have some student athletes that are looking towards the future, and if their future doesn't include some of the programs that you provide, I have to make other arrangements, and I have to do them yesterday. Second question is, how much are we paying people that are no longer under the employment of the school district to quitting or their malpractice? How much are we paying them? And in a contingency budget, should we be paying them? Those are my questions.
Ms. Tona, or maybe Mr. Ranieri?
Sure. I mean, with regard to the second question on the pay, I'll defer to Mr. Schneider on the amount. To hit the part though where he asked if we should be paying them, as we stated before, you're under contingency budget. You're permitted to make all contractual or legally contractual payments. These payments are all being made pursuant to various agreements with former employees, and therefore they are legally permissible under a contingency budget. Mr. Schneider, do you want to speak to the amount?
The district's financial obligation for such agreements is not more than $112,000, although it may be less depending on if certain circumstances are met.
And then I think Mr. Foster's other question was about the preparation of the budget.
The preparation was business office puts together the budget, and then the board either approves or disapproves or adjusts it before we put it out to the people.
He was asking the changes who presented the changes to the board?
Well, I put the suggestions together for the Board of Education, but as this is a public board meeting, this would be the time for the board to review those suggestions. Mr. Schneider helped me with input with putting numbers together. None of these decisions were easy. Everything on the list are things that we really don't want to eliminate, but the way the board needs to approach this is they get a recommendation from district office and they can review, as they did tonight, look at other options and ultimately make the final decision. So there was no opportunity. It was supposed to be this past Tuesday, but we were weathered out. So we rescheduled the meeting for today, but this would be typical practice for a Board of Education.
Yeah, let me also add to that, boards can't or not legally permitted to do things outside of a public meeting. So not until you have held a public meeting can these discussions appropriately be had between administration and the board.
Okay.
Okay. The only other person here who we haven't already tried is Penny Chikatla.
Okie dokie, let's give it a try. Hi, Penny. Can you try unmuting your microphone?
Okay.
You want to go back to Loretta?
Yeah, let me, so we're going to just go back to the people who are still waiting here. We'll try them one more time. Is that all right, Mrs. Downs?
Sure.
Okay, here's Mary Beth again. Mary Beth, are you there?
I don't even see her microphone.
Yeah, she's not muted, so.
No.
Okay. This is, here comes iPhone again.
Hi, iPhone.
Okay. This is somebody who just joined the group, the Zoom, who would like to participate. This is Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Amanda, could you hear us? I don't see your microphone. There you are. Hi, but we can't hear you. Can you find your little microphone?
Oh, there we go.
There you are.
How are you? Sorry, late at night. I have a couple questions for you guys. First, I want to say thank you for everything that you guys do. It can't be an easy thing to do. First, I want to follow up with what Leah had said earlier. I too have kids who I feel need to see their teachers every day. On that aspect, I have a son going into 9th grade. And what are we doing for these kids entering high school for the first time? Is there going to be an orientation? What are we doing as far as masks for related things?
You sent the letter on this, didn't you? Amanda, didn't you? Yeah.
Yes. And then my other question was just in regards to face masks in the high school. I know nobody wants to talk about it. We know there's gangs in the school. How do we defeat what color face masks people wear in association to different gangs?
Ms. Downs, you want me to take those questions?
Sure.
So the high school is planning an orientation. All of the buildings are planning different types of videos to acclimate the students, but the specifics, if you wanted to reach out to Mr. O'Hara, the high school principal, he'd be happy to share any specifics at this time, but they're still working them out. We can report on those at a later date. As for masks, the students will be required to wear masks. The high school administration is very aware of colors and related clothing, and they will be as vigilant as they are with any other article of clothing. They will be with masks as well.
Amanda, could you please give us your last name?
Sure, it's Golz, Golz.
Thank you. Anything else, Ms.
That was,
Turner?
nope, that was it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. We got next.
Let's try Katie again. No, okay, and here's Marty.
Hey, Marty.
Christine, how many questions do you have that have been sent in?
That are left. 1, 2. About a dozen.
Marty, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there he is. Go ahead, Marty. We're ready.
Okay, listen, my question was, yes, we have this budget, this austerity budget, a contingent, whatever it is. I mean, we seem to have, it's like we're looking at specific items that they were like the heartstring threats.
They're not threats. They're actually what we have to do on a contingency budget. And some of it is actually law.
Yeah, but can I finish the question?
Sure.
So there's the other there's the 144 million that's still there. Is there no other room in there?
Sam?
Well, I think Ms. Tona has outlined some potential changes to the operating budget that the board can authorize if you want to put back things into the budget that we, normally wouldn't be able to afford in a contingency budget. I think the district has its appropriations fairly well allocated given the size of our student population and our needs. Ms. Tona, I should defer back to you, obviously.
We know the dollar amount that needs to be reduced from the budget in order to operate under contingency. And none of the decisions that the board was looking at tonight were easy ones. So we have a certain dollar amount that we need to reduce from the budget in order to have a full operating budget for the next school year. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, the goal here is to maintain, the educational program as great as possible in order to preserve what we can for the students.
Does that answer your question, Marty? Marty, does that answer your question? I think Marty's gone.
Okay, I'll remove him from the group. We just had some other person, another number join. This person has their phone number on the screen, Mrs. Downs, rather than a username. Would you like me to admit them nonetheless?
Ask them if they could change their name.
A
way that you can do that?
I can't do that without admitting them first. So, yeah. Thank you, Robert. They're probably on a cell phone. Would you like me to admit them?
I guess if they. Hello?
Yes, hello?
Yes. Could I have your name, please?
Absolutely, Janet.
Uh-huh.
The last name's Douglas.
Okay. Thank you. Your question for
Thank
the
you.
board?
I was just concerned, you know, my daughter's an elementary student going into second grade. If there's any discussion or coordinating with any community organizations or anything out there that, you know, they're working on to help us with the days that the children will not be in school.
Ms. Tona?
Yeah, thank you for your question. Right now, we know that Scope has been offering in the past daycare options for families in the spring. I'm not 100% certain that they're going to do that again, but they do have a website. If you, I think it's scope.org, and they have some information. But we'll, as soon as we get more definitive information as a district, we'll post that on the reentry website as well.
But there is something in the works because it's very panicky for us, you know, because me and my husband both work and not working is not an option, you know.
Yeah, no, we understand. Right now that the district is not in a financial or staffing position or a space position to offer that ourselves.
No, not looking to offer it, and I understand the limitations. Obviously, we're having this discussion at the board meeting, but, you know, working with the, you know, the school can reach out to other groups and just kind of put together some type of reference list for us, or just reach out to organizations, let them know, because there's plenty of, you know, I know the relationship with the town is not great right now, but there's lots of other organizations and spaces without the community that I think we're overlooking. And it would just be a reassuring to the parents to know that some kind of discussion about this is in the works, because we feel out in the lurk right now.
Well, as we get information, we're definitely going to put together something to share with the community. I was told that St. David's, which is over near Roanoke Avenue School, that I know they have a pre-K program, but I'm hearing that they may be doing some childcare options. And I also read a news that there's someone that's looking to open another childcare facility.
Yeah, I reached out to both of those facilities as well, but the numbers that they're going to be able to take are nowhere near what we're going to need. So I think additional resources need to be identified for parents.
Yeah, we will definitely continue to work on that. I feel for you. I understand what you're saying.
I just, you know, with a Title I school, there needs to be more of a priority. I know you guys are sympathetic, but it needs to be a priority. We're a Title I school, and where kids are at a disadvantage already, and now with neighborhoods that's 3 blocks away, and they're in school 5 days a week, and with not the challenges that we're going to have.
We totally understand. Anything else? Did we answer your question?
No, unfortunately you didn't. I would like more of a definitive list that we have 5 groups that we're coordinating with, that we're going to, you know, when we get the word from the governor tomorrow, we'll release that, you know, immediately afterwards. It just sounds like you feel with us, but I don't feel that we're doing enough to help parents. I really don't.
Well, I'm sorry that you feel that way, but there's nothing we can do until we know what the governor's telling us to do.
And I understand that, but we also have to think ahead. We can't wait for the governor, because this whole step of the way, we're being given information from the governor literally 48 hours before those things need to go into effect. And here we are, nearly not even 4 weeks out from the school starting, and I don't know where my daughter's going to go that day after Labor Day or the day after that. And it's just very unnerving, because we have jobs where we won't get paid to sit home. That's not an option for us.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Douglas. Time is up. Your 3 minutes is up. We could put you back into the waiting area, and we'll get back to you. Next, Sam.
Dams, there are no other people in the waiting room that we haven't tried twice. So I don't know if you'd like to go back to Ms. Tona for some of the other.
Go ahead, Ms. Tona, please.
Okay. Mrs. Matway from Wading River. She noticed that Mr. Pineda resigned on tonight's agenda and was wondering if there is a viable replacement candidate for his position. We have posted for that position, and we will be interviewing, and we're confident we'll find a science teacher to fill that position, although it is a loss to see Mr. Pineda leave us. Mrs. Matway is also asking about the part-time Latin teacher and wondered whether he would be at the high school or the middle school. And we're still working on staffing. Part of the conversation tonight about the upper level foreign language courses will definitely impact that decision. So we won't be able to make a final decision on staffing locations until we've developed our final contingent budget. This is a comment from Jane Netwinch in Aquabog. This has been a difficult time for our community. Not only are we dealing with COVID, there is also a huge divide within our community. Unfortunately, the budget didn't pass for the second time. When a school budget doesn't pass during a normal school year, it is disheartening. When a budget fails during times like this, it is detrimental to our kids, schools, and our community. Now with the contingent budget, our children will not have sports, music, electives, and other extracurricular activities. As you know, for many students, some of these programs are what gets kids to school. For some students, this is a place where they feel safe, accepted, make friends, and where they can be part of something bigger than themselves. They learn teamwork, how to succeed graciously, and how to pick themselves up after a fall. I feel we as a district and community need to start picking ourselves up, stop pointing fingers, put the past behind us, and start rebuilding for the sake of our children and the future of this district. As a parent of an incoming 7th grader, it is heartbreaking to tell him he will not get to play sports this year. Our son has been looking forward to being a Blue Wave since he was in kindergarten. He was excited to finally get to wear a uniform and represent his school. I am sure there are many other students who feel the same way, whether it's sports, music, or clubs. Due to COVID, things might be different this year. However, other schools do not have the added issues Riverhead now has due to its failed budget. As a longtime resident, it is so upsetting to see what has happened to our wonderful town. However, I will continue to advocate for our children and help make a positive change. As a parent, I am asking the Board of Education and the administration to please do everything you can to help save some of these important programs for our children. This is where our kids find what they love, make good friendships, and at times form important mentorships. So much has changed for them. Let's show the students of Riverhead we care about them and our community. Thank you for your time. So thank you for that comment. I think it sums up what all of us here are feeling.
It's definitely
very difficult situation. From Mary Beth Anderson in Aquabog, why does the school district suffer from a lack of transparency with regard to the dens of iniquity, including the salary paid forward to the superintendent, the lawsuit involving the principal, the town's outstanding monies owed to the district, the lack of changes to an already failed budget resubmitted for a vote, and the 20% non-voting Riverhead population who has greater than 50% of the school population?
Thank you. Any more? Was that it?
Yep, from Lonnie Lewis in Riverhead. I would really like to know what the monies we paid last year in school taxes was used for, as we had no spring semester, therefore no buses, no sports, no after school clubs or events. Where did that money go? That should all be rolled over into this year's budget. Please explain. Ms. Lewis, as was mentioned earlier, the executive order by the governor for the spring required school districts to continue to pay all employees. So a large portion of our budget did go to personnel costs. We did use buses from time to time as they helped us with meal distribution. No, you're right, there were no sports in the spring, and we did prorate our coaches' salaries based on the time that they worked versus the time that they did not work in coaching sports, and same with our clubs and activities. So we understand what you're saying, and unfortunately that doesn't allow the school district to refund any money in taxes. It will roll over whatever's left. We're still working on that, but we will be putting those monies into the reserves as we do every year with any money that's unspent in the school budget. From Marilyn Banks Winter in Riverhead, which extracurricular activities have been cut, and does that include ROTC? So no, we're not considering ROTC as one of the potential cuts. And you heard the discussion tonight about extracurricular activities. Are any grants being pursued to offset any costs for the lost funding? Right now, we have our annual consolidated title grant, the CARES Act funding, typical federal and state grants opportunities that we are definitely participating in. Beyond that, we have a My Brother's Keeper grant that we're waiting for funding on that we were approved for. And we will continue to look for other options that are viable to help our school district. Is the school prepared to hand out masks for students, and are there sneeze guards in place on desks as well as hand sanitizer stations throughout the school? Yes to all of those three things. What is the daily sanitizing and safety procedure? There will be daily sanitizing. We'll have our custodial staff sanitizing often throughout the day, and better during after school hours when the students aren't there. They'll be cleaning all surfaces, but it will be something that will be looked at constantly because that's for the safety of our students and staff. Will the students stay in the rooms while teachers rotate, and will there be an option for students to continue virtual classes who do not want to return? On elementary, yes, students will stay in rooms and teachers will rotate. On secondary, the students will rotate. And yes, there is an option for virtual classes for those families that do not wish their students to return. From Yolanda Thompson in Bating Hollow, on item E, budget transfers, $112,200 is being transferred from line item Social Security to administrator salary. Is this to pay the remainder of the resigned Superintendent Dr. Henriquez's salary for the 2019-20 school year? Where will the funds be moved from in the event she does not find employment by next year as per the separation agreement? And is it permissible or lawful to take funds from an account for Social Security funds to transfer to an unrelated item such as salary? That $112,200, yes, that was transferred to make the initial payment to Dr. Henriquez. The funds for the remainder of the payment are already included in the school budget. And yes, Social Security funds is a line item in our budget, and we are allowed to make a transfer from there. Mr. Schneider, you want to embellish on that?
Yeah, so I just want to add to that. So obviously payments to Social Security come in two parts. There's the employee portion where the employee pays 7.65% of their salary towards Social Security up to a certain point, and then the employer has to match that with a 7.65% contribution. The money that is being referred to in this question is the money that the board appropriates in the budget for the employer's portion of the money. So any money in that budget line that isn't needed to meet our Social Security obligations, the board is able to authorize transfers for other uses.
Thank you, Mr. Schneider. From Yolanda Thompson, under contracts approved and executed by the superintendent, Nancy Hancock, chairperson for the Committee on Special Education and Preschool Meetings, why does the district continue to contract with Ms. Hancock instead of hiring her as an employee? Because it's a temporary basis right now that we're just looking to meet additional need that we have. Why did the district let go of Jennifer Lopez, who is a skilled and excellent bilingual CSE and CPSC chairperson? We did not let her go. She resigned on her own accord. Who supervises Nancy Hancock if she's being contracted as an independent contractor? She will report directly to the Office of PPS and Special Education. She will work under their direction. Who is responsible for setting her duties and workload if she's an independent contractor? Again, she's under the direction of our Office of PPS and Special Education. Who is responsible legally in the event that she does not follow state and federal laws as is required in the position of chairperson and causes harm or damage to special needs students in the event wrong decisions are made or services are improperly denied at these meetings she is chairing? Ms. Hancock, as an independent contractor, she does carry her own insurance. So should an issue arise, we would be working with our legal counsel to discuss matters related to her insurance. Mr. Ranieri, you want to add to anything on that?
No, I mean, you know, there may be some liability to her in the event there's some intentional action. But ultimately, she's serving as a chair of a CSE, and you know, for something like an impartial hearing, unless the action is you know, on her part intentional or grossly negligent, it would probably be handled in the same course of business as you would any other special education litigation.
Thank you. Also from Mrs. Thompson, have we received the 3D printers that were donated to Stony Brook for making face shields for frontline workers back in good working order? Yes, we have. Have we been reimbursed for the paper that was given with the 3D printers? We didn't give them paper. They use for 3D other types of materials, but it's not paper to actually make actual face shields. Who authorizes donations or loaning of school equipment and supplies? The Board of Education was aware of this as an opportunity to assist the community in the creation of face shields to help frontline workers when the pandemic happened. It was a conversation the board had and agreed to loan these materials. Right now, we're in the process of getting reimbursed by Stony Brook for the materials that were used along with the 3D printers that were returned. Is there a resolution and discussion by the board prior to loans or donations of district equipment or property? Again, there was a discussion by the Board of Education, and it was felt that in the term during the crisis of the pandemic, the district wanted to do their part to help the community and the frontline workers. Does Mr. Schneider, Mr. Ranieri, anything to add to that?
No, the board was made aware of the printers at the time, and as you said, Ms. Toner, we're in the process of seeking reimbursement from Stony Brook for the filament that they used.
Thank you. That was the word, filament.
I have nothing to add to that, Ms. Toner.
Okay. From Laura Huber in Calverton, when will parents get more specifics about each building safety plan? Soon. They're working diligently on those plans. And from Steve Lagnina in Aquabog, under the Government Accounting Standards Board, GASB Rule Number 77 requires school districts to report all tax abatements, whether passive or direct. Over the years, the town of Riverhead has given millions of dollars in tax abatements to corporations. This money could have been used to fund our schools. Where might I find the amount of tax dollars that were diverted from the school district in favor of corporate tax breaks?
Got to go to the town hall. Got to go to town hall, IDA.
Great question.
Thank you for taking that one, Ms. Downs. Mr. Schneider, Mr. Ranieri, anything to add?
I love that question.
No, I have nothing to add to that.
Good, thank you.
And that's the last question.
What's the last question?
That was the last question.
That was a good last question.
Anyone
Mr.
else?
Lagnina, you pleased the board with the last question of the evening.
Thank you.
Anything else to say? Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Have a second.
Second.
Mr. Dorr,
Yes.
Ms. Healy,
Yes.
Mr. Houski,
Yes.
Mr. Connolly,
Yes.
and myself is a yes. Thank you, Mr. Ranieri, for being here tonight. Thank you, everyone. I think it was a great meeting. Have a good night.
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 Good night.
Everybody.